just had to take a step out. I don't know.
Oh, did he? Okay, I missed that.
I don't know if he's taking a call.
Sure. We can come back to it. So we'll go ahead and circle back to that after.
Okay.
Discussion regarding the IP mill site demolition proposal for mass development. I think your update was that there is not necessarily much of an update. They're still interested in working with us, but are assigning someone to dive into the details with us a little bit more.
Correct.
Understand what we're doing and how that will proceed, and then potentially offer feedback at that point.
Correct. Yep.
So we're not delaying now, but they're okay delaying because now it's more on they want
They're not
to look at it
comfortable
further
proceeding yet.
before we proceed. So
Correct.
Okay.
But there's no stated timeline, so I can't advise how long that's going to take.
well, we're not directly delaying it anymore, so I don't feel so bad about that.
Right.
Took us a while to get there. If it takes a little longer to get to closure, then so be it. So we'll leave it off until we hear from them.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yes. Good.
Okay. Back to the first item: review of the community services cadet position description policy draft. Chief, come on up.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, I took the recommendations from last meeting, and I'd like to just start off by apologizing. I sent the town administrator the wrong spreadsheet for the cadet benchmark checklist, Appendix A. I sent the wrong one. Selectman Bastarash caught that, so that was a late add to your guys' packet. But you guys can see at the bottom of that, the only change I made is that I just put the little asterisk with the note, just kind of pointing out that all of it's important, but that the three main areas would be as the recommendation at the bottom. And then I received an email from Selectman Loyne with some grammatical errors, and those have been fixed in the job description. And then I believe it was you, Chairman Smith, that just wanted me to compare the policy and the job description, and just to make sure that they jive. And we did find that there was a few discrepancies under the training, and so we just had some similar wording to mirror that which was in the job description.
Okay, great. So that note at the bottom on the checklist, basically those three task areas should be proficient before, at a minimum before?
Correct. Those would be the priority. Those would be, basically, if they are not, especially, like with the physical fitness, if they're not reaching the standard before they go to the academy, we're not going to put them in the academy.
Right, that makes sense. I'm thinking maybe in that language at the bottom where it says should be proficient in the following tasks. Maybe at a minimum or at a prior to approval to.
Approval.
Yeah, just to attend the academy. Just to be clear on. Well, no, let me reread that. Maybe I'm just not reading it right. Yeah. Maybe it's just must be proficient in the following tasks
Okay.
prior to approval to attend or something like that at the end, because you do state earlier that
Yep.
that's to prepare. So
Yep. And then I did put, I think it was Selectman Loyne wanted some language in there about unless the chief felt otherwise, and so there was some language added in the policy to reflect that.
Questions or
Yeah,
comments on it there?
so
Excuse me.
by and large, I'm happy with it. Thank you for the changes. There was a couple of grammatical, just on the changes that you made to the policy. The job description and the appendix, I have no issues with. They're fine. It was just, it didn't read, I read it a few times. I'm trying to, it feels like it's missing a word. It's inside the new language related to proficiency, knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Right above the training.
Right above the training, yeah. And actually, I think I have the same concern within the one that's within training as well. It reads as demonstrate the ability to be proficient outlined in the cadet benchmark. It feels like it's missing a word there.
Are you on page 4?
I am on, of course, my computer crashed, so it's page 5 of the policy. It's the second to last bullet.
May I make a suggestion on that?
Sure. It just, I read it a few times and it didn't flow, and that's,
Would it read better if it were to say demonstrates the ability to be proficient as outlined in the cadet benchmark checklist appendix A?
that's one of them that I wrote down here too. Is
I can think it, but I can't speak it apparently.
just
can I?
just a single word
Demonstrate
as.
the
Demonstrate.
ability to be-
Demonstrates, yes,
Yep.
the
Or
ability to be
demonstrate,
proficient as outlined.
Yep.
And I think that same
Under the training.
sentence the first show the ability to be proficient as outlined. It just flows better. That's all.
Demonstrate instead of shows.
Yes.
Demonstrates. Okay. Okay.
So in the essential one, it's just adding as, is that what I'm seeing?
Yep.
And in the training one, it's changing show to demonstrate and adding as.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And the last bullet there, under attend and complete the Mass Criminal Justice Training Academy. If you read on,
Is it really just the second part, isn't it?
yeah,
Isn't it getting them to the point, not actually doing it as part of the cadet program?
Say that again.
So in training, in the last bullet, you say attend and complete, and then recommendation to attend will be made once they've shown to be proficient, knowledgeable, and have the ability to successfully
Yeah, that was added just so it would be consistent with the job description.
yeah.
and it's
I know where your brain's going with it. I think what he's trying to think of is, at one point, it switches from the job description of being a cadet to the job description of being an officer. Completing the academy is the requirement of the officer. Being ready and proficient to leave as a cadet and go to the academy is as a requirement of the cadet.
Right,
So
but
it's
they
like that-
also have to, because that's, remember, we've talked, we don't want it to be a lifelong cadet program, so they have to pass and complete the academy. So they need to understand, so the way I was
So-
looking at it is that they still need to understand that although they are not becoming, they still need to reach that level of being able to become police officers.
So the reasoning behind that is they leave to go to the academy, they don't pass the academy, they don't return as a cadet.
Correct.
They're done. So that's why it's you in order to go through this program, your requirement is to go and pass
Pass.
to become.
I see.
There's
Which
no
is,
like, oh,
which
there's
is
no
in
oh
the
I
one
see-
above, which is the last bullet in the one
Yeah.
above,
Yeah.
which is successfully pass it.
Yeah.
But I guess under training, it doesn't, maybe it's that it doesn't really belong down there, and it's fine because we have it above, that,
Yeah.
successfully pass. I think the attend and complete may not need to be in the training bullet,
Okay.
and instead just, a recommendation to attend once, the cadet has shown sufficient proficiency, knowledge, and ability and to attend, right? I don't know if to successfully complete depends on them, not on us. So
Okay, yep.
want to be careful. We're not
Yep.
saying that we've made them successful.
Yep.
We hope we have helped them be successful. And I think there's a couple other grammar ones on the just a word or two on the cadet draft job description, but they're not material, so we can always fix those after. They're not really content driven. Any other content based pieces?
No, there was just some grammatical on that one, but those can be adjusted after the fact before we put it to final print. We don't have to worry about that now.
You know, unless we want to, but not for the adoption. If it's just grammatical.
Yeah, I'm fine with adopting it, and we can work on adding as and the as we see fit later.
Yep.
Okay. Other comments, or do you want to
Which order would you like them
make a
in?
motion? Whichever order you would like. The order there in the packet, I guess.
Sure. Make a motion to approve the community service cadet position description as presented.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you, Vic.
Do we need to do the
Are you amending the policy?
policy? We need the policy one, definitely. The checklist is more of a working document that you own, so I think other than reviewing changes, we don't need to approve them.
Correct.
So,
Make a motion to approve policy and procedure number administration 4.36 from the Erving Police Department with an effective date of 10/28/2024.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Review of the use of electronic signatures, policy draft, third read. In .05 of A, 5A, three types. You might want to strike electronic even though the policy is about electronic because the first type is not electronic.
It is about that, but that was the language carried in the CSL. But I will
like
strike that.
In the castle, I mean, to me, I just don't.
Beat me to it.
Did I? As soon as I said 5A, you knew what I was talking about.
All right, so strike that.
Yeah. And maybe, just saying traditional non-electronic, being clear. I mean, wet is fine. I'm not worried about changing it, but that's the point is that one isn't.
Okay. I will make that change.
Five B. So I notice it's A and B under B, but they're not really indented or separated. I don't know if that's 5A.
Oh,
B.
I thought you, okay. I thought you said
AB.
5BB, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm confused. I don't see an A and B.
5ABB is what I was trying to say.
Oh, I see it.
Do you see it? So under 5AB, the electronic signature, that's either, and then there's an A and B. I don't know if we meant to indent those further.
See two more sub bullets.
I mean, I think,
Yep, that makes sense.
or don't separate them.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, under B, instead of hand-drawn, I would do wet signature,
Just to keep it
just
the
to
same.
keep it consistent with the one above. It's not a abstract of it, it should be the wet signature.
Yeah.
A picture of.
Yeah, you could just.
Picture of A. I don't really want to say that because it's already messy enough.
Okay.
Should be an uploaded picture. What is that? No?
Probably. Although that probably gets into the platform and less about the picture, but it's either uploaded or don't have that word at all. And it's just a picture. Any other questions, comments, changes?
None. And so you'll just fill out Appendix A as we go along.
Exactly. I was taking the same approach that we did. I'm trying to think of the last one. I think it was the OSHA policies, where we identified certain departments just to maintain the appendice, so they didn't have to come back for review.
I don't have any concerns with it. I think all the edits to it capture what we're looking for.
I think the only one was like kind of the process or the procedural statutory piece, but I don't see as many edits as my mind thought there was from our discussions, but it seems clear reading it now, so I don't know if I'm anything we're missing. Maybe just breaking into sections did it.
Okay.
I think so. And
Okay.
like anything else, if we find it in 3 months from now after implementation, we bring it back and adjust it.
I have no other comments.
Do the statutory requirements or adoptions have to be recorded? Did I miss that? I know we have the list of authorized signers for the accountant, but do we actually have somewhere we need to maintain those?
There's only a requirement for the land use boards of the special permit granting boards to record that at the registry. Other than that, all the
It's
other
just
approvals.
Motions and minutes type things?
Right.
Okay.
I think they should be on file with the stated offices, just because those offices would be the receiving offices for signed documents.
Okay. Any other reviews needed, or would you guys like to move forward with this one?
I'm fine with moving it forward. My question would be, I'm looking at the list of policies. Where do you see this one falling, Brian? I was
Great
looking.
question.
I'm just pulled up the website. I'm like, let's see where this one falls in the table.
I was starting to think that we would revisit our IT policies. Obviously not in the next month, but start to build out that section. You have previously unnumbered policies
Right.
that probably are several years out of date and need to be revisited. So it may make sense to classify it with that structure.
I'll defer to you guys who spend more time who worked on that part than myself. I mean, it's that or it's administrative.
Yeah, I don't think it really falls under administrative.
This is more, do you think technological?
Yeah, IT works. What do you have for we don't have one.
We haven't started that section yet.
No, that's what I'm thinking. It would be creating it right now on the fly.
Right.
Well, I think we should just go with a 100, which gives you plenty of
That makes
wiggle
sense.
room before and after. And it could just be an IT 100 or.
Mhm.
I mean, it could be any number because we have.
We're just starting, so
We
yeah.
have leeway of putting them anywhere we want after that, before or after it.
Right.
Any concerns? With the
For
number?
me, no.
You don't care?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. As long as it makes sense and it fits in what we have,
I'll make a motion
Fine
to
with it.
approve the use of electronic signatures policy IT-100, effective date of 10/28/2024.
I'll second that.
That's as amended.
Thank you.
As
As amended.
all those in favor? As
Aye.
amended?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
With that, it is 7:02, so we'll call the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee to order for review of the FY26 draft budget, planning calendar, and guidance. For the audience, we will be passing over the 6:45 joint meeting. As you can tell, it's past that, and we'll be rescheduling it at a future date.
Hi.
Hi.
You got a lapel mic.
I like those better, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Almost got to 5 before I called 5. I said almost got to item 5 before we had to call item 5.
Almost.
Welcome. So I know we sent out the draft calendar, draft messaging, et cetera, and my goal for tonight was to review anything that the Capital Planning Committee or Finance Committee saw, would like changed, modified, confirm the schedule makes sense, and if possible, adopt tonight so we can get it out to the departments. So I know the calendar's first, but we'll do the calendar last in terms of kind of review. The operating budget guidance document draft. Comments, questions, thoughts? And you've incorporated feedback from finance already, correct?
I believe so.
Did my best to capture.
Correct?
Okay. That's where I'm looking
I
too.
did my best to incorporate what I understood to be the guidance.
Okay.
I know I said it last year. I'm going to say it again this year. I feel like the guidance feels a little too guidance-y to me. It's not guidance, it's a directive. And so I don't know, I don't know, the tone of it to me when I read it comes off as, oh, you should do this, you might want to do that. Like I think it needs to be a little firmer that this is what we are expecting. It will be level funded except for X, Y, and Z.
So last year to that request, you all added the words shall throughout the first paragraph. I think it's in 2 or 3 locations to communicate the directive as opposed to a request. But if that's not clear enough,
I mean, The results last year wouldn't say it was.
Right.
Shall I bold, highlight?
Change the color.
I can do whatever you want to bring more attention to that directive.
Feels like a little less than must, a little more than should.
Will, operating budget requests will reflect level funding?
I think the select board went with shall because that's in a legislative or a legal manner. Shall is that certain language, but this is not obviously legislation, so we can use whatever terminology you think is more effective.
I guess from the finance committee standpoint, they didn't come in levelly funded, and we had a few surprises that we totally weren't expecting, and it didn't seem like the same message was received by all departments. And so I want to make, my thing is I want to make sure that no matter what department head is reading this, that every department head is walking away with the same message that this is how it's to be done, and that there are none of those unexpected surprises that are actually worked into the budget before they've even come forward to a budget hearing to discuss them or talk to us about them.
What if we, after the opening paragraph, leave it alone? It says shall, and here's how you address and think about increases and absorbing them, et cetera. Before the salary and wage adjustments, just put like expectations as a subheader, bold, and then budgets are level funded. Salary and wages are additional by, you know, for step or collective bargaining or whatever. And I'm paraphrasing or ad-libbing here, but just to give that idea. And maybe rework that a little, right? Submission requirements, well, you know, it requires a narrative, it requires a worksheet, it's expected to be zero, it's expected to show an increase for step change, or whatever, right? Those different pieces, and just kind of list them out as these are the, kind of as a second call out to the expectations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
You can do that.
Yeah, I think that would work.
I mean, I'm open to other ideas too. I know I was hoping to modify and adopt tonight, so I'm not trying to make a ton of work on the fly for you, Brian, either.
It's okay.
My only comment on this is that's fine if you have all departments and nobody is looking to make a change in the coming year. But there might be budgets that, or departments that are looking, their request is for an additional staff member or, you know, and so by saying that it has to be level funded for the services that are currently offered, it doesn't give capacity for those additional. So I just want to make sure that that language is also, you know, that there's a spot where they can say, there's a need, and I think FY26 is the spot that I'm asking to address that need. Make sure that fits in there as well. I mean, I'm in agreement that for what we're currently offering, we're asking to do level funding. But if there's circumstances outside of that that dictate a request that would alter that, capacity to submit that in a way that makes sense.
And I hear you, and I just wonder if that, in that scenario, if that request should be coming outside of the budget
Yeah.
first, and should first be coming and saying, hey, it's my, you know, I have a request, I feel I need to add a staff member, here's what that would cost me. Is this something that I am cleared to continue to work into my departmental budget? Instead of just having the assumption be made that I can work this into my budget, so I'm just going to. I guess I'd kind of like to hear from that department head and hear their explanations as to why they feel that they need that staff member before it's just automatically in the budget.
I think we had also talked about evaluating new staff members as like a group, so that we can say that, you know, there are 8 people that the town of Erving want to hire, to prioritize them and not just be able to say, yes, no, this is the most important, this is the second most important, and to go down the list and be able to prioritize them. And that would be a lot easier if it was ancillary to their initial budget.
I think what also needs to be woven into that is, and for this reason, I agree that these should be discussed before being worked into the budget, is any adds to staff could impact our benefits, and which is outside of that department's budget, but in our overall budget. So they can't just make assumptions that, oh, if I hire this additional person, it's going to cost me this and I can save there. They have to recognize that it's going to cost the town this over here as well, and factor that in. And I'm not sure that's been done in the past.
Not as structured as you just described it, I will say. Listening to what I'm hearing, like specifically around staff increase pieces, which maybe that's a carve out in how we address that through budget season, like as a separate area that we review. It started from budget overall being level funded or not, so just want to understand, is that the only area of increase that draws a separate concern or discussion, or is it other increases that beyond staffing?
I can't think of anything else. I think anything else would be covered. If it was capital, it would be capital. If it was operating, it would be noted when they come to us and show us their operating budget. So I think that's the only thing that would be outside of that I can think of.
Yeah, I think anything else, when they do their narrative, I mean, if we're asking for a levelly funded budget, to me, if they're doing their narrative, in that narrative, if they have lines that are increasing, then they should be spelling that out in the narrative. That this line is going up because I need, cleaning supplies suddenly skyrocketed in price and I need to get those. So this line has increased because of this. Or, I mean, we always have the fuel, the electric, those are always ones that increase. And so, the department heads know that we know that that's going to go up, but they also always tend to include that in their narrative as well. And so to me, a levelly funded budget, those things are explained. And so if a line item is changing, you're telling us why it's changing. And on the flip side, if a line item has drastically decreased, you're explaining that to us as well. Just so we have an understanding of, why did all of a sudden were you budgeting X amount for this line and now you're cutting it by $3,000? Like, what's happening here?
And I don't want to be ticky-tacky about it, but if the price of fuel oil is going up and the price of electricity is going up, should that be kept off to the side and have some kind of formula applied to what they were last year? It goes up by 6%. It goes up by 8% for everybody, as opposed to one department, it goes up by 8%, another it goes up by 25%.
We've locked in your supply contract for this year and all of next year, so there should be no need to
Okay,
expect any changes in supply. It's the delivery cost that can change,
okay.
but we will be monitoring those.
I think when they've been significant, just on that thread, and I think we did a 30% kicker across the whole budget before on electricity when we know there was a very significant broad change. So I think we would handle something unusual like that was broad, but year to year fluctuations in how a building operates or something, I think don't fall into that, right?
So I didn't want to interrupt and jump in, but just sort of building on the conversation about the benefits and asking if there was anything else is really carrying that concept across the board of total costs. Like, for example, somebody comes to capital, they want to do a project, and this is the cost of the project. They also need to outline what may be associated costs year one, year two, projecting out subscription fees for software or licensing or maintenance agreements. If you engage with a company, just as an example, you buy a copier or a multifunction office device, and year one it's X amount of dollars to purchase, but year two there's a maintenance cost, year three, and so forth for that agreement. So I think we need to look at total costs. and not just initial purchase or expense.
So just to move this along and still capture everything that we're all talking about, I think there's some great points there. Not trying to make this any wordier, but calling out some of the things we discussed. If you look in the first paragraph under overview, if you just take budget, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth line down, last word of that line is budget, starts the sentence. Budget request shall first consider if those increases can be absorbed. If you just run out that entire sentence through will be considered, just bold that. It captures what we were talking about, and it calls attention to it, and it alleviates the need to have to put another piece of language underneath it. And then also, if you go down to what Ben was just saying, in the departmental narrative, and also, Deb, you were saying it, the very last sentence, if your request significantly reduces a line item and or increases a line item, the rationale should be explained. So just in highlighting, so instead of creating new language and making this even longer than it already is, just highlight the things that we've already had put in there and just bold those out a little bit and call them out. If there's any other, like one line here or there that really sort of capture, these are all the same things we just said, and it's
Yep.
just calling them out and making sure we draw attention to them.
But if we were to bold out the sentence you were talking about and not have another section underneath it, would someone think that if they can cut $20,000 out of their budget, they can hire somebody?
So let's take those two separately, just because that was a call out, maybe that needs a separate process, so not to ignore that, but let's come back to that. Because if we have some language that we're happy with on the overall, and then we can figure out if we need to insert for that specific case. I might go slightly further. You kind of started this, the overview section, it says overview and it starts that paragraph where the budget request starts that you were talking about, Scott. I would put that as its own section then, and maybe we put expectations or maybe we don't, but have that just like salary wage adjustments as its own paragraph. Because I'll call it out and separate it from, this isn't an overview, this is guidance or direction on what to do.
Okay.
You
So
know what I
instead
mean?
of
It's
instead of
separate.
bolding
It's not
it,
in an overview, it's starting to what you do.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, it gets to the same point. It just tab it down and make
Yeah.
it its own paragraph.
And it says, we're going to consider it. And it still just talks about increases as being part of it, not necessarily that they should be level, right? So I think the issue's still there about not being clear, but the expectation is that it is level. If it's not level, there needs to be clear documentation. And I know what you're saying down at the bottom about, significant reduction increase, and that applies even if it was a level funded budget, right?
Correct.
So, and this discusses, existing service versus changes in service, right? And so those are two different drivers. So we're looking for a level budget for, existing service. If there's a request for a change in service, to me, that's a difference like a change in staff. Where if there's a proposal to change a service level, up or down, but especially up, right? It needs to be understanding what that's going to do and what the cost involved. The salary and wage, it says what they should be based on. Am I hearing the group saying they expect that to be, the budget to be level funded inclusive of required wage and salary adjustments? Or exclusive? Do you follow my question?
My thought was inclusive. We have a table. We know what all the steps are already guaranteed. They're there. Those that have contractual obligations, we know what those are already embedded. There's no hidden the only piece that we would have would be any base wage adjustment that we decide for any of the non-contracted employees.
Those not under a bargaining agreement.
Those
or
not under
contract.
bargaining.
Yep. If we do any kind of market adjustment
Correct.
for this year.
And so having the base already be established with whatever the current step would be or any other adjustment that's contractually obligated, already worked in, shows us where we're at before we ever consider a base wage or market adjustment.
Included in the submission, yes. Included in level funded? Expected to be level funded inclusive of that? That's my question.
No, because I think this,
In addition?
that's in
I would say in
addition.
addition.
In addition.
That's the clarity that I'm
And I
looking
think
for.
that's why it was, to me, that's why it was its own paragraph. All salary and wage adjustments, it's outside of that overview of where we were discussing the level funded.
Well, and this is where I think it gets muddy, right? And so
Yeah.
if that's the language, then, if section 1 is budget shall, try to absorb anything first and be level funded, salary and wage adjustments are expected to be in addition to level funding, right?
Yes.
Like, being really
Yes.
clear with the directive, right? That it's not, because I know last year that was one where some departments tried to include it and some did not in the level fund or in that directive. So I just think we should call it out
Okay.
to make sure it's clear that we either anticipate that you're absorbing it into the budget at level, or we're anticipating that contractual step, table adjustments are additive to your prior budget.
So I would like to work from the frame that it's added to. So they level fund the services that they currently have. They work their best to do that. They know their obligations for step or any salary wage increases that are there. Those get added on after that creates a new budget that gets presented. If we are struggling to balance and we have to look at things, we know where we sit with that. And then we can start asking if there are things that can be done to absorb some of those salary based on what we see. But we don't ask for that first. We see where those adjustments bring us and then go from there.
Correct. The finance committee, when we met and discussed it, pretty much
Same
came to the
thing?
same thing that
Okay.
said, submit your budget with those step and grade increase, contractual increases included in that. We know that they're coming. We know we have to do it.
Right.
They're kind of like a given. You can't say no to them,
Right.
so we know. So factor that in with your budget.
And the request isn't to offset that by finding line items within your
Correct.
budget to decrease.
Correct.
It's take them as they are, as their own standalone value, and we'll deal with what that looks like later and discuss it. That was,
So the request anticipates a level budget plus salary adjustments.
yes.
Yes.
As dictated
Yes.
by
Yeah.
contract or agreement. Okay.
That was my thoughts.
I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure it's clear on clear as mud, right? So we're not,
Yep. Do you want to add a line under salary and wage adjustments then and close that out and just say that
we should.
the expectation is that these salary/wage adjustments will be handled separately from the level funding? Or however, what other
Yeah,
language you want?
I don't know. I was thinking maybe to simplify, all salary and wage adjustments, all salary and wage budgets should be based on, the collective agreements, right? It's really, we're adjusting them based on agreements that exist and are in addition to the level funded budget.
Okay,
Is that simple enough?
that's fine.
Sure. That's clear as mud, but sure.
Please.
We clarify it by breaking it into
Sure,
Section A, services, equipment, etc. Section B, salaries based on collective bargaining agreements. Put the two together for a total. So that
Well,
they
that's
know.
not a bad idea. And then if we did have to go back and make adjustments or anything like that, we know what we know, like, this is services and these are salary wages. Brian's
Well,
frowning.
You're gonna know those anyways because they're going
The
into
budget
the,
input's already set up that
I was
way.
gonna say, it's already set
Yeah.
up
Set
that
up that
way.
way,
In
yeah.
Zobrio, it's already doing that.
Right.
I mean, my thought was literally a sentence afterwards, that after that salary wage adjustments, simply just saying, these are these are an expected adjustment outside of level funding.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I was trying to get those words, my brain couldn't get them out, so thank you.
It's a Monday.
That's all I was trying to do.
Mondays?
I don't know, that's all I was trying to say is like, it's not expected that it's within the level funded, we get it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Got it.
From mud to just murky.
Brian, just because I don't recall, do we send out any type of additional guidance when it comes to the budget meetings for the department heads?
Last year we did. That was
Like
the
a-
first year that we had. We gave sort of like a schedule and a little explanation of how you are encouraging people to use that time.
You talking about like how we're going to do those reviews, or are you talking
What's
about?
to be expected of a department head when they come before that meeting? So
Yeah.
that would be in that guidance, so that's fine. So I'll just hold my thoughts till we
I
discuss
I
that.
forgot to send that out to you all to review it because that was an addition to your process last year, but I can send that out in advance and we can adjust that so that when we're ready to send it out for January, we can do that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Under the narrative section there, if the request significantly reduces or increases a line, it must be explained. Like, no, it doesn't matter, it must be. Because we've had a lot of those where there's changes and there's no comments. Yeah, just-
Yep.
And I don't even know if it needs to be rationale. You need to explain it. Why you did it, or what you're proposing. And the paragraph below that, I think one of the points that I heard a lot of last 2 years of budget was discussion about what fees are collected and if or how. I think it should be how the fees offset the budget. Right, because there's been a lot of areas where we've said that, and they vary. I'm not saying they're huge everywhere, but we don't even see it. We don't see the inbound and we don't see the outbound in the budget. So we don't know whether those fees are coming in and they're offsetting something, or if they're just being banked, or what's going on there. And I'm proposing that the guidance is that fees should be offsetting costs,
Yes.
unless there's a savings fund purpose for them, but I don't know of any that we have that way. Those, from a Zobrio standpoint, those will be there, right? The ins and,
They're not, they're going to be based on fund, so they're not going to show per department. So there's not going to be a direct correlation. So I'll use the senior center as an example. You're not going to see a revenue line item tied directly to the general fund for the senior center. But within the general fund exists all of the revenue lines that feed the general fund, right? Same as a grant fund. So in the grant funds, you'll see revenue and expenses, so that'll be clearer.
revolving funds.
Revolving funds you'll see.
So those we will see, and they will be tied to the group that they're for.
That's correct.
Expenses and ins and outs.
Correct.
I think that's more where most of these were last
Right.
time, was around
think so.
revolving fund. So they were more about
Right.
specifically earmarked inbounds that are supposed to offset outbounds, because we understand that
Right.
other receipts come in and become
Right.
free cash, right? In a future period, they may be coming in for a department, but they're not used against expense at the time
Right.
or in that fiscal year.
Right.
So I think it's specific to revolving funds.
Okay.
Having not looked at the Zobrio, the additional information, I have to trust that you gave them accurate information with the numbers, and
Right.
having not broken out the Zobrio budget module myself to see that, I have to just trust that your numbers are correct and
Now that you bring that up, I do at some point need you all to discuss how you want your information this year. Are you expecting printed books? Are you wanting PDFs? Do you want access to the budget module? If you have access to the budget module, I need to restrict read-write down to just read only, and maybe there's a member per board that has write access. So there's a lot to decide about that. I can give access and just do read only for now. Then we can discuss a later date.
I can tell you that I do not want paper budget for me.
Yeah, I don't either.
Do not do that.
Nope.
Read-only access would be just fine so that I can
Okay.
follow along in real time.
Okay.
We should probably schedule a time between now and budgets coming in for all of us to get together and
And
see
just-
what that looks like.
yeah.
And we'll just do like a working session to understand some Q&A, a
Right.
presentation on what it looks like in
Yep.
Zobrio, and then that will better inform us to be able to provide some feedback on, if you have at that point, well, this is a sample of what it generates. Is that going to work? What do you need different? And then
Got
we
it.
can be prepared.
Okay.
That makes
can do
sense. So we can fit that in on a, pre-budget meetings, so we can,
Okay.
between now and then.
The only part of the budget that this is not going to work well for is the capital portion, because you need to have an existing line item to tie a project to. And we haven't found a great way for us to create sort of a fictitious line item to sort of hold a project that may or may not actually become a real funded project. So if somebody requested, and I'll use a replacement cruiser as an example, there's an existing line item. Every time you fund a vehicle, we use that. So that's easy. But if it was a new project,
If it's a one-off.
you don't want to create fictitious information in the accounting system. So,
Well, the risk is if it doesn't come to fruition,
right,
then what do you do with that line item that
Right.
is
It's
held
deleted all
forever?
Right.
Yeah, it's messy.
right.
Well, all those projects we do one time and never go do again are that way after they're done. I mean,
Agreed.
So it's, maybe our vetting process for what gets submitted gets
Right.
better, and then they are projects. It's just when, not if.
So
Okay.
Necessarily, I don't know. We're not there maybe yet.
So we
but
played around with the idea, do we create just sort of like a standard line item that people can attribute a project to? Doesn't actually become the real line item, but it's at least a submission point through the system. That didn't seem to be super useful other than to provide a dollar amount. So we just held off on that piece for now because the operating budget is a big enough transition for all the departments. So capital, my suggestion would be to maintain the process we used last year or similar to it, while we're transitioning the whole operating process into the system. And then as you get to the budget review process and we're really building out the projects you're supporting, we'll build all those line items and you'll see it all in there. But the town accountant will wait to create those until she's given the guidance to do so.
does that work? Yeah.
Works for me.
And then I think we can see how that goes and build on it in the off season.
Right.
Or build something more robust for next cycle for capital. Once we've got operating complete. The submissions, this one's especially capital, but in general, I think there was some discussion last year about whether we were expecting that the appointing authority for each department had reviewed and approved the submissions before they were coming to review within the greater group. And that's not meeting night guidance. That's, to me, it's in the narrative here, if that's what we're looking to have done.
And you're talking from both operating and capital.
I mean, I'm bringing up the topic. That was a discussion last year. It wasn't fully implemented, if it was implemented at all. So is that what we want? How do we want it?
I know last year Capital tried to start doing that because there was just questions as to whether, and I'm just going to use the school committee as an example, if the principal was submitting capital requests, that's actually the school committee's budget, and the school committees are the ones who own that. So it was, how are they told? The same thing like with the assessors. If, Jackie is the one submitting a request, how do we know that the assessors are aware that that request has been submitted? So that's where we had said we want those boards to sign off on those requests ahead of time. So that way we know as a board, this has gone through all the proper vetting from the board who is submitting it.
put on all the submission forms a date or some indication when the appointing authority reviewed and approved?
We did last year, didn't we?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think we
Okay.
talked about it and communicated it, but it'd be right on the submission form, the date the meeting was held, or I think every appointing authority, I think, is, not every appointing authority is a board or commission, but
No.
date of approval from the appointing authority.
Yeah.
The only place that gets muddy is when we have departments that we're talking about doing that before they come to the first
Right.
joint meeting. And that's where like the liaison role comes in, where it's not the full appointing review, it's the liaison review.
Well, is it? That's a question.
Could
Right?
be, that's
Could
one
be.
of the
It
options.
could be,
yeah.
right, absolutely.
Just to, and I had said that at the last meeting, saying that, we all have departments and boards and commissions that we liaison to, just to be able to say, touch base with them before they submit it for the final review, or for the first review, just to make sure that it matches the guidance, and if we have any feedback prior to it coming to the full boards for public review. What I don't want to get into is, as a liaison to various departments, or even I'm the liaison to the school, preemptively giving guidance on what they should be submitting based on my own beliefs of what their budget should look like, as opposed to,
Right.
here's the guidance that we set forward, and does it meet the criteria? That's, in reality, or do you have any questions that I can help you with, but not, you should change this in your budget, because that's what I want to make sure that we steer clear of, is that we are engaging in your budget discussion of your actual budget that you're going to be submitting, and sort of enticing you to do it one way or the other without actually giving everybody the full ability to see what that budget was.
I guess, at least in how I was thinking of it or thought the conversation went last, that may have been the opposite of what the goal was, and I'll pick on one of mine for the sake, because the school has its own reporting authority, so that one's different.
It is different. Yeah.
But they're all, most of mine are here, so I'll pick on Glenn. Highway. So if I review that budget submission and all that heavy equipment that he's going to submit for this year, making this up on the fly, and I'm not okay with it, I'm like, nah, we shouldn't submit any of those, or vice versa. I think that discussion should be the board going through, if there's significant things in there, to discuss it. I agree with you that one shouldn't be influencing it, which is why I think it should be all. But I wouldn't, on the same token, expect that that budget gets submitted with a bunch of things in it that are changes or significantly different to the finance committee to review before the board had seen it and said yes.
Correct.
So I think
we're
if we
saying
want
the same
liaisons
thing.
to do a cursory one, if there's a lot of things in there that are changes or increases or significant, then I think that needs to get scheduled to be reviewed before it's submitted or finalized with the greater board. Does that make sense?
We're saying the same thing.
Okay, all right.
Yep. Just different words, but
That's fine, as long as we
we're
are.
getting the
Yeah,
same
okay,
thing.
all right.
Because I don't want to have to tell one department, don't do that, and then they pull it out of their budget, but I've got two fellow board members that would look at that and go,
Do it.
they hear about it 3 months later going, what do you mean? We both would have supported that. What are you doing? You can't give that guidance by yourself. We are a board of three, and so that's all I was trying to say is,
But you're not suggesting delay it to budget review
I'm
meetings?
saying
Okay,
that
that's what I
if we
missed.
have some
Got
of
it.
those, if there's a spot in here where we can say, we found, as liaisons or to all of them, we found 3 or 4 that caused concern that we want to have a further discussion on with us as a board before it goes to everybody for their final review of whether or not they want to, make edits, give recommendations, then we do that. But we do start at the liaison level, bring it to the board if there's things that, or if there's red flags that we want to call out.
So to summarize, operating and capital requests are expected to be reviewed and recommended, it's not approved, right? Recommended by the appointing authority, a quorum of the appointing authority, For the select board, it's expected to be your direct liaison. If the select board's your appointing authority, if they sign off on it and are fine with it, then it'll just get submitted that way, and if not, it'll be scheduled for a board meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and so I'm just looking at the schedule. I know we said we'd come back to it, but I'm just trying to figure out, where does that fall in to make sure that we have time to do that and give the departments enough time? This is a pretty packed schedule as it is.
I also have a question about that too.
Sure.
Sometimes, like if a department wants to do a major purchase and you say, no, we shouldn't do that, shouldn't that come to the capital planning committee so that we can at least put a line in the sand that they requested this and we can't get this now, but it might be in the 25-year plan? If it never gets to us, we never know about it, and then it just gets dropped on us.
Well, that's what, that's the opposite, isn't it? I mean, that's what we used to do. Submissions went there, and then we reviewed them later as a group.
I've never heard of you guys wanting to do this for the operating budget, so I'm a little taken aback to hear that tonight. This was done, Capital proposed this mainly so it was appointing authorities knew what their staff was doing. There was one year in our very earnest early days of capital planning that a former principal submitted essentially for an entirely new kitchen for the elementary school. And all of Capital looked at each other and went, does the school committee even know about this? And so just kind of over the years as Capital has gone and we've tried to evolve our process, that's kind of where this was stemming from, was just to make sure that some staff members do have another layer of authority above them before they have the school committee or the assessors. And so we just want to make sure that everyone within that department is aware of what's being asked for and what's being requested. The way it's being discussed for operational, it kind of is sounding like if as a liaison you have questions about a budget and you can't work it out with the department head, then you're going to bring it to the Board of Selectmen to have a meeting and discuss it. It sounds like you're holding your own budget hearing on that department head before FinCom gets involved, which is just another step. It just, at least in my opinion for the operating budget, it feels like an unnecessary step.
So was the proposal just on capital then?
That's what Capital suggested before. I had never thought about anything like this as an operating standpoint. And it just feels like another layer of work for everyone involved. And I'm not opposed to that, but I do feel with budget season, we ask a lot of the department heads as it is. And we all get the budgets with enough time. And I think if we as individuals see something in a budget that is like, using Glenn as the example, if Glenn is all of a sudden asking for $100,000 extra for Anything Goes, I'm emailing Glenn going, what's up with Anything Goes? So I think that's something that, is our responsibility to do when we see those things within the budget.
As I said when I started, I brought it up because it was a topic last time. The scope and what it covers and how we want to do it is up to the group.
Well, I did start the conversation by saying that I think the liaison for our piece of it, the role is to make sure that it complies with what we're asking. That it meets the standard of what they're trying to submit.
Gotcha.
So, and it's not, and I will say, after hearing what you said, I agree that maybe it's not bringing it back and having us look at it. It's just telling the department head, I'm looking at these 4 line items. There's huge increases and there's no narrative. Make sure you fix that before you submit it. You didn't, give a narrative on this. Can you please give a narrative about why? You missed this section. It's blank. Make sure we have that filled in. It's just a cursory look to make sure that we're not getting surprised with incomplete budget requests at the first time that we all hear it
For operating.
for operating.
Okay.
That makes a lot more sense.
For operating, it's a liaison or a member of the appointing authority has reviewed.
Sure.
And for capital, it is recommended by the appointing authority.
Yep.
So we should hold a select board department capital review ahead of the due date,
Yes.
just for capital with our departments,
With our departments.
for just their capital requests, which is a shorter list of things to review.
Right.
Then a budget, overall budget.
Yep.
Okay.
So on that note, going back to the calendar,
Thank you.
brought up in your email that the sort of tentative submission date should be adjusted. And based on that conversation, I would add at least a week or two.
When you say add,
So either do we make it December 11th or December 18th or something of that nature? I'm indifferent if it comes in on the Wednesday or what day of the week it comes in.
Well, the first capital planning review is on the 12th, so that
No.
will have to push too,
But
right?
that's for existing.
Oh,
open
my
capital.
mistake, yep.
For not
Got
for
it, got it,
26,
got it. Yeah,
that's
no, you're
all
right,
the
yep, that's the priority.
25 and
Okay.
previous.
Yeah.
Probably should have started off with, I assumed that you were keeping your format from last year.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so it wouldn't be till January 9th is the first time that
Right.
capital planning's reviewing those.
right, and then the first actual hearing isn't scheduled till the January 13th.
Wednesday the 4th.
So you talked about pushing that date to when? For the 11th? Is that what you said?
At least the 11th.
I'd say even you could go Wednesday the 18th.
Yeah.
Just give
The
it to
entire operating budget's all going to be in Zobrio this time, so.
Right, it's gonna,
So there's no
your
manual-
lead time from getting submission to being able to present is minutes rather than
Right,
hours
because
and
the work's
days.
not being done 3 times.
Right.
But what's left to do is put together all the capital packaging. So
Right.
that is work that will still happen, which is fine. We created some templates last year that we can redo using like a merging format, so takes out the Excel spreadsheet.
So are you proposing to delay the overall submission due date or just one or the other?
I don't
Because
see
we
them-
only need additional time in theory to review the capital. Or it's a separate task.
Whatever date you say you want the submissions in is the date that they'll be live in Zobrio for you to review. So
For operating.
for operating.
Right, but I'm talking about capital. Capital's the one where we're adding a review step.
I would just, for ease for department heads, I think them just having to focus on one date is better. And so, I mean, capital, I don't think we care when, so I would say if giving them to the 18th works, give them to the 18th. But I wouldn't split it. I wouldn't split hairs and say one is due on this day and one is due on this day. I think then we're just gonna have confusion.
Okay.
Mm, 18th is fine then, unless anybody has.
Yeah, it doesn't really change anything. It just gives everybody a couple extra weeks to finalize it and gives a few extra weeks for either, for appointing authority or liaison to review prior to the 18th
Right.
for submission. Fine with that.
So we should set a timeline for when we're gonna review when they need to have capital done by for the board to review. Since it's a bulk of the group. Do you wanna do the 9th? Do you wanna do the 2nd? I'm guessing those are probably ideally if we do it on December 2nd, if there's nothing else.
I'm going back and forth between the two dates. I'm not sure which one.
Well, second gives more time if there's adjustment or we need to review anything further.
That's where I was, I mean, if they were originally planning on submitting it all by the 4th, asking for two days earlier for capital for us to review.
And it's draft. I mean,
It's draft.
To be
And then
realistic,
still have-
it's draft, so.
And still have two weeks and 2 days
Okay.
to make adjustments before the actual submittal on the 18th. Yeah, that works.
So we'll add Monday, December 2nd, select board review of direct report capital submission requests. 7 PM.
I think it's necessary.
I'm sorry?
I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Do you think it's necessary to incorporate a list of who the direct reports are?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think it's best to be clear about what departments we're expecting to arrive, yes, if they have a request for capital.
Correct. If there's no capital request, then no need to show.
Got it.
Okay. Operating budget guidance, we said, I said we'd come back to you, staff change, which we didn't yet. How do you want to handle that? Do you want that to be separate? Each one of these separate things that might be reviewed before put in the budget sounds like another meeting, so I'm just trying to be thoughtful about how that looks.
I think to me, it's pretty basic. If you have a request for a staffing change, whether that be an addition or a change to hours or anything like that, do not include that in your budget. Figure out the math, what it's going to cost you. Come prepared to your budget hearing to discuss that.
So that wouldn't be discussed separately, just won't be submitted with the budget. It'll be a
Correct.
discussion the night of the review as a separate,
Yep,
so put it in the narrative,
yep,
but don't put it in your submission.
yep. That's what I would do.
Okay with me. Does it work?
Creates a placeholder, creates a discussion point.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is it about staff? Is it about that piece?
It is about the operations submissions. So whenever you're ready for that, I'm just gonna hang back.
Okay, thank you. We might be. Was there anything else operational? I know we got a little bit more probably in capital, but nothing else.
Well, just going down to the form, you have last year's form on there. You have 20.
Yep. I'll have to revamp all of that.
I was looking at it going, I'm sure he just pulled up last year.
Draft form?
Draft form. It was just very, I was like, FY '25.
I wasn't going to rebuild it with the fillable PDF until I knew what you wanted. So
Fair enough.
Come on up, Abby. Oh,
It's fine.
Come on up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Can we just scrap that the narrative the narrative is to be brief? The narrative should be what the narrative needs to be for them to explain their stuff.
okay.
I know everybody's shaking their
However, it's a written narrative.
right. I don't want 10
This
pages.
is not an
but-
infographic. This is not pictures. This is not examples.
Yes.
I would love to do more of those things on a quarterly basis with departments, but that's not in the budget. That's in the budget book. That's in the town report. That's in some
Right.
quarterly newsletters that we need to develop with everybody, but not in the narrative, right? So it's expected to be a written narrative. I'm okay if it's long, but written.
Okay.
I know a picture's worth 1,000 words, but not for this.
Agreed.
Capital likes pictures. Just gonna say.
I said this is the operating budget narrative. Allegedly. Abby, welcome.
Hi.
Questions?
For the record, Abigail Baines, Library Director. First of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate the granularity that y'all are going through this with. I've been watching on YouTube, trying to come in person when I can, and thank you for all the work that you're putting in. Two quick questions about the operations expenses request and narrative. The first one is, when we are submitting a level funding budget, where would you like notes about negative service changes that may happen due to level funding?
I would say that would belong in the narrative.
So there's like goals and initiatives, challenges. Your forms have been very specific, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we're putting it in the right place.
I would say, looking at the form, unless Brian changes the headers, to me, that would probably go under the significant budget changes section.
Do you want a separate header, or do you want a header to be more inclusive?
Because it's not technically a change to the budget, it's a change to services that are impacted by not increasing the budget.
I mean, I think we should change that header personally
Okay.
to significant service or budget changes, right? Service level or
Sure.
budget. Because then it's one or the other. We're either reading about the service level impacted if it needed a budget increase, or we're reading about the budget increase to not impact the service level.
Right.
It's one or the other of the same vein,
Fine.
right?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. And the other note was, you know, I'm a newer department head, and I'm wondering if there's like a mission for the town or a service statement or some strategic bullet points that would help guide how the different department heads are choosing what we're proposing for our budgets and our changes. I don't want to be operating in a bubble, which is why, again, I try to pay attention to these meetings and what my fellow department heads are doing. But along with your guidance, if there is a mission of service that we should be following along, I would like to do that.
That's a very good question. I mean, we have talked about that before. We probably have some semblance of it in different ways. I don't know that we have one as concise and cohesive as you're noting. That gets us off into things about master plan and like all these different pieces. And I wouldn't say we have a one paragraph mission statement that's really clear and defined.
I know we don't. I'm not going to mince any words. We don't have one. It's re-
So maybe not for this year.
No, I mean, it's a
It
great
is a future
idea,
note.
though.
Again, I don't want us to be operating in bubbles in our different departments. You all obviously have some goals in terms of the board, capital planning and things like that, and we all want to be working together.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll find generally, and this won't be a surprise, right? We'll look to try to maintain the resources and assets that we have, you know, be sustainable about it, be, you know, fiscally responsible, but also ensure that we're either maintaining or expanding the services that our citizens are looking for. So, and I think each group has different ways they approach that, right? Obviously, from programming and services to, you know, curbside trash, right? Like, there's a lot of them. They're all for the kind of the same direction. So,
Yep.
I don't know if anybody has anything to add beyond that.
I would just
And
say, thank you for calling it out, and I do think it is something we should work on developing.
Yeah.
Well, however I can contribute, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good when we get challenged to answer something up here, but we're usually challenging the team to answer us. So I like it.
Fair is fair.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like it. It's good. All right. So operational budget message, relatively.
Is there a representative of FinCom and of the select board that I can run that final draft before? Then say it's done and then send it out to all the departments? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So your form has admin coordinator by the way, and the title too. I'll make a motion that we approve the draft FY26 operating budget request memo and request form with final approval of the final document by the department heads, the chairs of the select board, FinCom, and capital planning before being sent out.
Okay. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I-
Are we included in that?
Yes.
Aye.
Since it's from all of us, yes.
From all of us.
Just checking.
You just
As
got
long as you're good
these
with,
things.
as long as you're good with that proposal, yes. That the three of us will sign off on the final document.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Capital specific? We talked a little bit about some of it. Jim, if I kind of captured some of the things you mentioned along the way, there was, you would like to see capital requests also speak to kind of their future operating cost, their operating expense impacts, right? For how long? Like, this project will have an annual operating cost for next year or for the next 3 years of, or how far out are you
Yeah.
looking for? I mean, it depends on what the asset is, obviously, but
Each project would be unique to itself. I mean, there are some projects that are one and done. There are others that might extend out over,
okay.
I don't know, 5, 10 years. I mean, one that comes to mind, and I don't know the details, but if you take like the upgrades we're making in security at the school and other department buildings, there's a fixed cost for the equipment and the installation, and then there's licensing and maintenance costs and how long are we keeping those out? And it's not, some of those are gonna change too, certain subscriptions, certain licensing, depends on usage, volume of data, other things, and there might not be exact costs known, but if there aren't exact costs known, even estimates on both amount and time. As we get to operational in year 3, year 4, so forth and so on, we have to know if ABC project is going to cost us $10,000 this year.
Right. Does that make sense
Yes.
to you?
Yes. A lot of the things you're talking about.
I just want to make sure I defined it, right?
I was gonna say, a lot of the things you were talking about, though, would roll into operating costs, right? Not necessarily capital.
Right. Well, and so Abby just alluded to working on a bubble. In the organization I work for, what we're addressing that initiative on is breaking down silos that we seem to be working in, so that we understand left hand's doing this, right hand's doing this, and how's it going to affect the torso as we move forward. Just as an analogy, but. And in terms of that strategic mission, what's our vision for the town? What is our goal? What are the objectives that we want to build out, moving forward as a suggestion? And how do we drive those financially?
I think it makes sense. I think it's one area, especially when it comes, I'm thinking of like software and IT. It's one thing we've never taken into consideration is that, yes, we're saying yes to making that software upgrade, but then we don't actually think about what is that impact of the annual subscription of $12,000 or that sort of thing, and making sure that that department is planning for that in their operating budget. So I do think it's definitely something we should work on incorporating.
Or the fact that when you install it, you only need 10 licenses, but in 2 years, you need 35 licenses.
Yeah.
Stuff scales. Or vehicles, if we're adding to the fleet, not just replacing, your overall annual
Yeah.
maintenance costs are going to go up, things like that. And I think that's, I kind of agree that at least some directional, right? This capital project, I anticipate it will increase my operating expenses annually by X amount for indefinitely, or will increase over time, or for 1 year. I think that's what you're saying is another maybe line item on the capital piece. Because yes, it's not the it's not the capital project per se, but if we do the capital project, that's the other,
Yeah.
the other shoe, right? The other half of this is that there'll be now a budget impact. Are we able to absorb that in coming years too? So,
So I don't know how you make that sound good in the narrative.
We got a lot of coffee tonight. We got this.
Brandon, do you still get departments, I don't remember from last year, because you gather all this for us. Do you still get departments that do not use the forms that you include here to submit for their submissions?
So last year was the first year that we incorporated that Microsoft form submission tool.
Okay,
So I think, I can't remember exact numbers, but I think we had a fairly good response participation. We have a few entities that don't have the same login credentials into our system, so that proved to be a bit of a challenge.
okay,
But yeah, I think we had pretty good adoption across the institution. We're changing systems again this year. It doesn't always help. We're going to do some workshops to help people start that transition. Some staff members have already been using fake data in the system to see what it looks like and test it, and then we're going to wipe all of that clean and start fresh in November. So I'm not expecting too many challenges with that piece.
okay.
In terms of the capital process, if we keep using that form submission tool that we used last year, just based on this conversation, I think there's some new fields that we need to add to both the 1 year and the multi-year, multi-phase request forms. So we'll make those changes. Yeah, I think we can make that work for you all.
Okay.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a jerk, unless there's some compelling reason why they can't submit it in the form they're directed to submit it on, kick it back and don't accept it or consider it for review until it's done appropriately.
Was actually wondering if there shouldn't be a little guidance in here that says this is how you will submit them.
The only challenge that I had, and this goes back to the platform that we were using, the system wouldn't allow you to upload a document unless you had login credentials. So if there was no upload feature, if it was just a monetary request in the narrative, they could use the form and they could be outside of our organization.
Okay,
To upload a document or upload a file into the system, which all the capital projects require submissions, that required login credentials. So that means issuing usually a user. We tried doing a sort of like a guest login. I don't think that was successful, though we tried it. Maybe we can try it a little bit more. Anybody with the user credentials could, so.
Well, that's my compelling reason why they can't, which
So that
would
may be
make
the
the
one
exception
challenge.
for.
Right.
which maybe
Okay.
that's a footnote that says, expected to be in there if you don't have the ability to upload documents. Those
Right.
can be sent separately, clearly labeled
Right,
for the exceptions, right? And then we can after collate them with the form, right?
right.
or we just leave it however it is for this year, because it's gonna change for next year if we have software, so. We're just gonna leave well enough alone, I would say, for this last time.
But having had the experience last year, we can refine it a little bit more. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm thinking in terms of adjusting the narrative there in the last page of the memo, the second paragraph from the top, where your department board required to identify prioritization. About midway through, it says they should address capacity to oversee the project, right? And I think maybe clarifying a little bit more, I'm not suggesting language, but as you're drafting this, that we want to understand how much staff time and how is that budgeted, right? Is that incorporated in the capital cost, or is it assumed to be taken from the operating staff time? I don't know that we call out a contingency. I think we did on the form. I hope we did. We should,
did.
I think.
We
think-
did
yeah, I
last
think
year.
we
we
Last
had
year,
it.
okay, it's on the
I think
form,
we
all
did.
right. And then maybe that's the area where you add,
Yeah.
anticipated annual operating cost and duration. Does it escalate, for how long, and, what's just, it's directional, it's not exact, right? That'd be a place to kind of give the directive, obviously we'll have to add to the form, right? Does that make sense?
It does.
Anything else on the capital request piece?
I'm not suggesting that anything changed this year, but the National Institutes of Health is changing their definition of a capital project to $10,000. obviously, I don't think we should change this year, but maybe in the future, think about increasing the amount.
That may require a
Some
bylaw
other areas
change.
actually have less. Other
Yes.
towns, cities
Really?
and towns actually have it like lower. I think you were telling me 3? Or
Well,
some-
yeah, seminar I attended, it was 3,000.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
well, I would recommend maybe that the capital planning committee, as a member also, look at that separately from the budget process, if that's during the season or off season, to look at the bylaw and the policy, and if there's changes that need to be made to that going forward. I think that's something that came up a little bit last year, but budget season's just been endless for a little while there, so
Yeah.
be a good opportunity to look at those kind of things and understand what makes sense for the town. Other questions, comments, adjustments to capital?
This just popped into my head. Under the, if you need assistance from other departments to support this project, there are some departments that do ask other departments to do work on some of their projects. And so my only concern would be, how does capital know that that discussion has taken place? So is there some way of requesting that they get like a sign off, or that department head that they're going to be partnering with is aware of the project? I think rec and highway is a common one, that the rec has projects and highway often does a lot of dirt work and things like that for them. And so I'm just thinking about that. If they put forth a project and they say, well, we're going to need highway to do 40 hours worth of work for us on this, how do we know that they have actually gone and spoken to that department?
I think the simplest would just be a support letter for now.
Okay.
I don't think there's a way really to do multi-user login and sign off on projects. Maybe someday we'll have that complexity. But I think what we could do in the short term is just say that with your submission needs to be a support letter from the
Perfect.
department that you're going to be counting on.
Okay.
And it can be a very simple letter. It doesn't need to be in-depth. So.
Yeah, those numbers need to come from that department.
Right.
Whatever you're anticipating that to be.
Right.
If no other, I'll just expand and make a motion that we approve the FY26 capital budget. Request memo, draft guidance with final review and approval by the capital planning committee chair, prior to issue.
Second.
And do you want that to be, is that yours, or is that the group? Is it just capital endorsing that, or is it the overall group here?
I'd like to have the whole group. The whole group's here.
All right. Well, you call it. It's a motion and a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay,
Unanimous.
excellent.
Thank you.
Circling back to calendar. So far, we made 2 adjustments. I guess we added a capital review for the select board
Monday the
departments. Monday the 2nd. We changed the deadline for submissions overall from the 4th to the 18th.
Yep.
Other than any nuance around time, where things fall, if something needs to shift down the road, you've already incorporated holidays, so I think it's the best we've got right now, unless,
Yeah.
The only final request that's been brought to me is in regards to the end of February. So if you look at February 24th, we have the planned presentations from the Culture, Rec, Health and Human Service Departments. And then February 28th, we have a deadline for any outstanding documents, revised numbers, anything throughout the entire 2-month review process is due back to you all.
Only gives 4 days.
So for those smaller departments who present on that same week, they would only have that week to get you corrected information. And so the one request that came forward was, is it possible just to give a little more time for those departments to be able to comply? I don't know that we're anticipating it, but that was the one request.
So at least from a capital standpoint, capital reviews the requests. That's a short window. I feel like my gut says no. I don't want to change that, because the departments that come first, like when it comes to the capital review and things like that, they have a very short window if they're coming for their hearing to answer the capital questions, or the FinCom, and FinCom will do it too this year. And so I feel like it's just 6 of one, half dozen of the other. You either get your questions in the front and you have a lot of time to work on them, or you get them at the end. I don't know. I don't think our questions are that out of the ordinary that is that short of a window to get answers.
Okay.
For capital, maybe not. For operating, might be a little bit different.
Well, I would say to do Thursday because we're not going to put something in the packet. I mean, we should have them before Friday if they're going in the Monday packet. So I think it's probably generous to say it's Friday at 5 if we're anticipating reviewing those on Monday.
Yeah.
It says regular business, so are we anticipating reviewing any of those on the 10th? Like February 28th to the 10th? Is that the anticipated review of any remaining?
I think that's how you did it last year.
So I don't know that.
I think FinCom, if I remember correctly, FinCom and Capital Planning wanted to have separate meetings to review their independent work, come up with some of their thoughts and recommendations.
Yep.
And then the 10th was your first time back together to review anything outstanding and start talking about recommendations.
I got you.
So does it change a whole lot to move that out to the Thursday, the March 6th?
Well, they're meeting on the 3rd
Yeah,
and the
FinCom
6th
won't
to
see it.
review. Because they're meeting
I-
on that Monday.
Out of curiosity, Brian, what were do we recall what some of those outstanding questions were last year that 4 days wasn't sufficient?
I don't have that good of a memory.
Because I don't feel like there were that many questions that we had.
Well, we're not 100% closing the budget on the 10th or the 3rd. So I would just say if there's a concern based on the questions we raise in the meeting, then they can ask then if they need more time. We'll have
Yeah.
that dialogue then, right? I mean, it's not rigid. It's not that we couldn't change it. So if we have a significant request for information that they're concerned is going to be hard to meet in 3 days, three,
Okay.
4 business days, then I think we would expect them to bring that up in that discussion and we can evaluate our request or our timeline.
Right.
That
Sure.
makes sense. I don't think there's a need to change it otherwise.
Okay. That's all I've had for feedback.
It's the 14th this year, this coming year?
That
This
feels
is the year changes. My first draft, I followed what it's been for the last couple of years, but yes, it's the second Wednesday. So
It's okay.
you have,
I can't remember the language. We've changed it a few times, I know.
so because the month starts on a Thursday and it's the second Wednesday of the month, you have the 7th and the 14th.
that feels late.
This is the odd year, yeah.
The meeting is the second Wednesday? I thought it was the second. Okay.
Second Wednesday.
All right.
First Monday is your election.
No, it's backward. Oh, no, because we changed the swearing in. The
Yeah, we
swearing-
only
oh,
did it
Jesus.
once and then we changed it back.
Then we changed the swearing in
we
instead,
should-
right?
yes,
In the
right.
in the effective. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've
few-
changed it a few times.
A few changes.
Ooh, okay.
And I've confirmed these dates with the town clerk, so.
All right. Well, you would know better than I do. All right. Good enough then.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. You don't
Calendar's
need a
amended?
motion on the calendar. Yeah.
No, I will make those
You are
changes.
good. Anything I missed? Anything else on the budget?
No.
Till our next meeting. Our next meeting on this currently is next year, right? If I'm reading that right, it's the 13th?
That's what I have.
January 13th.
Okay, take your word for it.
Before January 13th, we will schedule in a joint meeting to go over Zobrio.
Okay. That doesn't need to be on the calendar though, does it?
Not on this calendar, no,
Yeah,
but just,
okay.
just
Yep.
for us as a group to see the Zobrio software specifically, even if it's a separate night just for that.
Yep.
Just to, so we can start figuring out where that fits in.
Right.
Other than that, most of us will be doing some budget work independently of each other, the three of us, groups.
Right.
Okay? Nothing further? make a motion to adjourn the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee at 8:20 PM and continue the Select Board meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We will
Enjoy
see
your
you
evening.
again, I know. Continuing our agenda, we're going to review the draft invitation for bid for the wastewater treatment fence procurement, second read.
I
don't
don't
think
pass
we
over
are.
that.
We are, okay, we're going to pass it over.
Can we pass over that? And can we pass over the Public Works office space cost estimates?
Okay,
Yeah, I went through my packet
However-
a couple of times and I was like, I'm trying to match this up to the agenda. and
yeah,
It's not on there.
hence my earlier question, was there more things, and I forgot why I asked that earlier.
Yeah.
That was it.
Late breaking additions. So,
Overly ambitious last week.
that's all right. We do need to work through the Public Works one prior
Yes.
to the capital review of open projects.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So they can have some guidance on what to bring.
I was going back
Yes.
through the statutes today, and I just want to review a question with council on that particular one.
I got you, okay. Review meeting minutes, September 30th, 2024.
Motion to approve the minutes from Monday, September 30th, 2024 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass over the letter of interest and potential appointment for the Board of Library Trustees for a future joint meeting. Review the position description for the wastewater maintenance laborer.
So you last updated this in 2021.
Come on up, Pete. I don't see any proposed edits in this.
No, I don't.
Don't have any
No.
requested edits, okay. Is that grading the right, with the tables and everything after collective bargaining? I don't know if that grade letter is right.
I will correct the grade letter, and we started adding the collective bargaining reference, so I'll add
Okay.
both of those.
And this, unlike the others, is exclusively wastewater, no water responsibility?
That's correct.
Hmm?
That's correct.
Anything else you guys saw? Anything that needed edit?
No.
Jim, you good?
No, yeah, nothing.
So you need a motion to approve as amended for
Make those two
updates for the
changes.
collective bargaining changes?
For the title changes?
Yeah.
Motion to approve the maintenance labor job description as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll begin the eternal posting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Designation of special municipal employees. You can stay if you want. I know we're going back to water and sewer
very quickly.
momentarily. If you want to hang out, you can.
Okay.
We're going right back to them after this.
So we're just cleaning up some special municipal employee designations that, as we've been reviewing files, likely should be on record. And that included the list that the town clerk has on file of all the previous designations. Just for context, it's a appointment for the position, not the person, the
Right, 'cause
individual
they could-
holding the position. So it's a one-time designation, unless it's ever revoked.
There's not a designation for the select board?
Not that I could find in the record. I think by default in the community of our size, because we're under 5,000, by default
There's
you
some
are.
statute exemption. Oh, you think it's just a defaulted by statute? Okay.
That's my recollection, but I can pull that back up.
That may be the case. I just remember some conversation about it, probably back in 2015
Right.
or something, but it's been a long time, so
Yeah.
it may have just been by default. Are these the only ones that we know of at this moment that need to be cleaned up?
Those are the ones that I'm aware of, that I ran past council.
Okay.
We debated on the engineer, whether or not we need to be specific, like special engineer for wastewater, special engineer for roads, and while you could do that, it's your choice to do it, it's your designation. The recommendation from council was to just keep it broader and keep it as outside engineer, so it differentiates from if you were to ever hire an engineer on staff to do that work.
Right.
So should it be plural or not? Does it matter? If we're not doing separate?
It's just the
It's
position.
just a position, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter, okay.
You can
good.
assign several individuals to the same position if you chose.
Right.
Questions or concerns? Motion?
No concerns.
Do you care to have them all in one motion?
They can all be one motion if you want.
Keep it moving along.
Go for it.
I'll make a motion to designate the positions of outside engineer, outside surveyor, Franklin Regional Council of Governments representative, Franklin Regional Council of Governments alternate, Franklin Regional Transit Authority representative as special municipal employee positions for the town of Erving pursuant to MGL Chapter 268A, Section 1N.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Review of the federal fiscal 21 CDBG report for quarter ending September 30th, 2024. Or the Community Development Block Grant Housing Rehab Program, is that right?
That's correct.
Unacronym that for a minute.
Tail end of this project.
Yikes.
I didn't have any questions with it.
Okay. In summary, for those watching, they closed 18 housing rehab unit contracts. 14 are complete and 4 under construction. And 90% of the funds to projects and 98 expensed. 98% of that expensed.
Correct. And you recall you extended the grant period with the
use-
state through December 31st.
To use up the remaining funds? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Do we know if they anticipate completing it, or are they going to need another extension?
I will reach out to confirm. My understanding is they anticipate not needing a second continuation, but I will double check.
Good. Good, good. And if there's remaining funds, what happens to them? That would be a question.
I will ask
We
that as
reach
well.
out. But I have. Any others? We don't have to accept this report, right? This is just an obligatory quarterly.
As they administer it for you, this is their obligation to report to you quarterly.
Right.
Whether you
This is
adopt it
not
or
one
not.
we have to
No.
formally receive, right, for
Nope.
okay, for the filings. Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay. Review of new water service connection application, River Road. So that's what this one applies to?
Yes.
Yes. And
Keep
I
track,
did,
mate.
I did clarify that this print is from the previous one, so where it says proposed house is not proposed, that's the new, that is the existing house. So that's why it's an old map.
Right.
Okay.
But it was
And-
cleaner than the hand-drawn sketch in the,
Right, he brought that to me today, so.
That reminds me, the application refers to 50A. We need to modify all of the forms now to acknowledge that ADUs are allowed by right in all zones. So 50A is the house, 50B is the new unit. So we need to make that clarification on that record.
And it was 50?
It used to be 50.
Correct.
So current is actually new, a new address as well, technically, right?
So 50A is just the existing structure renamed, or renumbered, I should say. 50B is the new unit that you're just
The ADU.
considering adding the service to.
right.
I confirmed both of those with the town clerk.
I know I spoke with the superintendent, and then from what you had told me, it meets the 10-foot requirement, and any other crossovers, if there is one, I don't think there is one on this one.
There isn't.
It meets all the requirements for distance between and connections. Pretty straightforward. And it just reiterates that we need to work on our forms.
They all need to be
They
redone.
they are lacking quite a bit. It's one of those areas that we have not addressed in quite a few years.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? We got, I know we talked last time when we were talking about water, I believe, about having all the insurance and licensing information. You have everything you need?
The
for
only
the
thing I
contractors?
need to get from him is the company that he's gonna use to do the tap for the water.
The water tap?
Right, he doesn't know yet. I told him we need that before he can proceed, obviously.
To
He
start.
can, if it's approved by you tonight, I'm sure he may want to start, laying in the line and everything. The only thing he wouldn't be able to do is to tap into the main
Until you're satisfied that the
gives me
person's
the
licensed to do
certification
so
of
and
whoever's doing the tap.
insured.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns with you vetting that, just as long as you get it before
Yep.
that part of the work begins. We have a bunch of other approver signature sections on here, and I don't think we need them. They're not
Yeah.
filled in, obviously.
Yeah, I was questioning that with,
yeah.
with Brian earlier today. I was like, these
On the
need
sewer
some
app there.
adjustments.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns?
None.
Okay.
Want a motion?
Please.
Motion to approve the application for new water service for Edward Wilcox, new service to be installed at 50B River Road. Yeah.
Second.
Do you want,
Can you just authorize the superintendent to sign?
yes, authorize the water and wastewater superintendent to sign any and all applications and permits.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review a new sewer connection application, River Road? Same location, same ADU, right?
Correct. Just 10 feet away.
Back to the 10 feet. And same there, you'll get everything you need ahead of time, make sure it's all set, so any other questions on that one? You're on a roll if you want to keep going.
Sure, make a motion to
Keep going,
approve
Scott.
the residential building sewer application for Edward Wilcox at 50B River Road, and to authorize Pete Sanders to sign any and all required documents.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review of new sewer connection and road opening permit applications for North Street. So,
Can I talk about that?
yes, please. Come on up if you would. Pete, I can grab another chair or come back. I think there may be some changes or questions here, so. Yes.
I had applied for a sewer tie-in for 3 building lots off of 1 connection because I was told that the sewer line that runs up past the lots on North Street was privately owned by 219 North Street.
Okay.
And I looked into that and found out that the sewer line is owned by the town of Erving. So I'd like to change my application to 3 separate tie-ins. There's a 8-inch line that runs up North Street to supply 1 house, and that house recently sold, and it's nothing in the deed of that house that they own 1,000 feet of sewer line on the town layout. And then I also found out that that house did run town sewer line up to their house, but it was at their expense to extend the town sewer line. It wasn't a private line. And I also have a letter from the select board when that was done saying that the town owns that sewer line and that 219 does not have rights to that sewer line. That was a letter sent to my parents back when it was done, that those 3 lots could be tied into the sewer line at any time.
Can we take a look at that document, or those documents, because we're not aware of them at the, at this point, obviously,
So this
or any filings, if you could.
This was a letter that was sent from my father to the town when the sewer line was put in. And then this is a letter from the select board saying that the sewer line is owned by the town and not that residence.
I'm just gonna, I'll give it back to you. Yeah.
And then this is the deed for 219 North Street that doesn't have anything about private sewer on town property.
Okay. Give us just a second, we'll just take a look at it. Sit there, I'm sure we're gonna have questions, but I just wanted to look through these real quick.
Yep.
And just so, for the record, and to wrap my head around it, I know we discussed a little bit before, so I think I follow, but for you guys too. 219's on the west side of
The
North Street?
east side.
219's on the east side of North Street?
Yep.
And the lots are,
They're also on the east side.
Okay.
And the sewer line is run up the west side of North Street.
and it connects 19 to the last in-road structure?
I'm not sure where the last structure is.
Okay.
The last structure that's visible right now is quite a bit south of 219 North Street. But most likely there is another structure north of that, just it's under the dirt.
Pete, I'm just trying to visualize this on the fly. The last, because this was a discussion of not knowing whether this was town or not, or not being unaware of that, the last structure that we thought was town-owned is in the roadway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not, I wish I had a map.
Justin, you still have that from what you showed me the other day?
So you want to take a look at these, bud?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
It's on the phone, but
What is that?
so this is North Street. This is,
Can you email it to me?
yep, so this is 219 North Street there. These are the 3 lots
Okay.
that I'm trying to tie into. This is my parents' lot across from that. The sewer line goes up that side of the road all the way up to the 219 North Street. So what I'm looking to do is tie directly across all 3 lots into that line. It's an 8-inch line that goes down parallel to the road, and the last structure in the road is down there
Down
at
here.
194 North Street.
If you, oh, did you pull up North Street itself? If you forward that to Jacob, if you can you email it? To jacob.smith@Erving. They were aware of as approximately here. -ma.gov, and then I can,
Jacob Smith.
Erving-ma.gov. And I should be able to get it here, and I can show them and share it with them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Oh, that's something new tonight.
I should have had him send it to you, probably been faster. All right, I'll look for that. come in a second. I'm just gonna finish reading these. Did I give you one? Yeah, I did, okay. Follow up one in there. I just forwarded that to you guys.
Thank you.
Document. It's giving me an error when I open it, but it opens up after the error, so let me know if you can't for some reason. Those are the first two documents. Thank you. You're welcome. Did you see those? Would you pass them down, please?
You good if I have questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Just reviewing this, but go right ahead.
Given the short timeline, you still comfortable that all three, because you're talking about three distinct openings,
Yep.
can all be done in the timeline within the one day? Because you'd only have tomorrow and potentially some of Wednesday if you ran into issues, and that would be it, because we're,
Right. Which I was talking to Glenn earlier that possibly if they had longer time frame. The other thing was if I could close the road, they could definitely get it done faster because of the area that they're doing it. There's a guardrail on one side of the road and there's a hill on the other side of the road. So the only way they can dig parallel to where the pipe's going is to sit in one lane, dig the other, and switch sides.
Vice versa.
If they have to dig perpendicular to where the pipe's gonna go, they're gonna be digging a lot bigger hole to put a 4-inch pipe in.
Outside of emergency or exigent circumstances, 12 hours of notification is not enough to close a road. There has to be a justification or reasoning behind closing the road, and we have to forewarn all the residents and do the due diligence and post that it's done, unless there's an emergent need or exigent circumstance. This does not fall under that. We wouldn't be able to do that. So
Yeah.
it's going to have to be done with, one lane of travel. And because I reviewed it the way it was submitted with the one, and I thought, okay, it's a long run, but they can get that done in the one day, and if they have any issues, they'd be able to get it to a second one. I spoke with the superintendent about it. I didn't know until just moments ago that it was going to be 3, and I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking. Are you? What's the contingency plan if you don't get all of them done? Because
I was told they could definitely get 2 done in one day, where worst case scenario, I could use the one to do both lots. It's the biggest thing is getting across the road at that point. So worst case scenario, 2 lots would be supplied on the one line if I can't get 3 across in one day.
Thank you.
So procedurally, stop me if you're reading and I don't want to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead.
There's a couple things, Pete, is this, it's 3 lots with 3 separate connections, is that 3 separate permits? Versus a single? Because this is 1 permit for 1 connection.
Is the plan just to run one connection into the main?
No,
So I think
3 separate ones you're talking
the
about?
request is for 3 separate lines, right? Tied in?
Tied into the main that's running parallel with the lot, rather than running down the road into the main.
I would think it would be 3 separate permits because
Right.
eventually those are going to be separate lots, different owners, correct?
Right. They already are separate lots.
Right. So, I'm just asking because there's a lot of changes, right? I know there's been a lot of changes, to getting this submitted, obviously. And I'm not disputing the documents. I don't know, right? And I think last week when we spoke, we knew there didn't seem to be anything filed at the registry about it. And I think, I should clarify. Pete,
Yes.
would you pull a chair up, please? Just so it's clear for anybody watching. What is your understanding of this section of sewer pipe? And maybe we can be clear about it, or clear as we possibly can, because I'm not clear now. It extends beyond the last structure in the roadway, right? Along the side of the road layout, of the paved surface? Is that, do we know?
So
What is your understanding as the wastewater superintendent of that line?
as far as to what the town owns, my understanding was it ended right by 194 North Street. There's a structure right there, and that's what it ended. Everything that I've heard afterwards, that it was a private line, so I mean,
But it's a 8-inch sewer pipe, which is the same as what the rest of the road is. So generally, a private sewer line isn't an 8-inch pipe.
I have no idea as to, I mean, you can put in whatever size you want for a sewer pipe.
So
As
Again,
long as
it's
it's
not to-
capable of handling the amounts.
it's not to dispute whether it's right or wrong, it's to understand what we knew before tonight, and
Right.
then where are we tonight, right, in terms of what we can take any possible action on. We have to know without a doubt that, well, as best to our abilities, without a doubt of what's what and what right we have to do, take any action with certain things. So I understand the letter. I don't have any history on this beyond, what we've read tonight. Obviously, what you and I have discussed, and then what Pete knows as the wastewater superintendent. And I'm just trying to clarify what was known. So as far as you knew, it ended at 194
Correct.
at that last structure. Was the end of the public sewer on North Street. And then you were aware of this piece of sewer pipe existing that went up? I mean, you knew we served that because we're built, we don't build, but you knew that house was served by sewer? What does this go up to? I guess that's where I was confused. There's 219s across the road. Is that the last house served?
Yep,
The yellow house, is it yellow?
yeah, Jill.
Yeah.
That's the last house served. There is a house past that, but they're not tied in. They're on septic still. 219 had run the sewer up to their house because they did a perk test and the perk test failed, so they didn't have a choice on whether or not to tie into town sewer. And they were told that they could pay to run town sewer up the road to their house to be able to tie into it. And that's what they did.
And just to visualize this, it's run up the opposite side,
Correct.
and somewhere it crosses and ties to 219.
Yep,
And 194 to 219, there's no tie-ins today. It's just the line going up.
correct.
Okay. Which is on the opposite side of these lots, opposite side of 219. Okay. I was trying to visualize it for me. So, at least so far, what I'm getting is we have an application, but you're asking us to change that application to 3 separate applications. One
It
for
makes
each.
more sense for me to stub directly across the road than run another 750 feet of sewer pipe up the east side of North Street when it's already on the west side.
Logically, yes. I just want to understand the changes. So it's moving to 3 separate. They're direct connects, and they would be stubbed and capped on the east side.
Correct.
Glenn, is that 1 or 3 permits from a trench standpoint?
It would be 3.
Would be 3. So that would be 3 permits there. The line you'd be tying into, we don't have documented on town prints as sewer, Pete.
I couldn't find anything.
And we have this letter that states that it's private, but I don't have any print. I mean, I don't know. I'm struggling with the lack of data to be able to make a decision, and we don't have, the change coming in just now. I mean, obviously we don't have time to go and look into this and dig into records and try to find documents and understand what was done, how it was done. I know you're saying it's an 8-inch. I have no idea. I don't know if Pete knows. I don't know.
It is.
Glenn looked at it with me
It's an
last
8-inch.
week.
Okay. Because I haven't asked Glenn to come up here yet. He said it was an 8-inch, but how do you know that? Come up here, please, Glenn, because
Is that the one they took?
now I'm
Both that one and the one, you can see it from the one at 194.
no, please say.
It goes
Anywhere.
up to that one, it's 8-inch. And then from the one they
Whoever
hit
you
with
wanna
the
be
milling,
tonight.
it does go up 8-inch from there too.
So during the milling process, 2 weeks ago, the milling machine had actually hit the exposed structure that's exposed now. So the new frame and cover had to be replaced because the milling machine broke it. So at that time, we were down in it, actually Darby and Pete Walsh came out with a frame, got it fixed. So you can visually see that it's an 8-inch. I met Justin out there last Thursday, when we thought we had a plan to tie in down to 194. Took the cover off, measured the depth of it, so they knew where they had to be for elevation on the east side of it. And it's clear it's an 8-inch line net. that runs up the west side of it. You can see it come right out of the structure. It heads right over to the swale on the west side of North Street and heads up. So it's an 8-inch line, plastic line that runs all the way up.
I'm not a wastewater expert or a road expert, so would the size of that change along the way for any reason, and would
Only
we know
probably
that the
to
other
where-
side was?
Probably only to where 219 ties into it. It probably ties in with a 4-inch.
Is there a structure where that is? Do we know? We don't know. Okay.
I don't know.
None of his tie-ins, I believe, are going into a structure though, correct? It's going into the 8-inch plastic proposed now.
I assume that's normal. Tie-ins aren't always in a structure, they're wherever, right?
They're not always in a structure, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I'm having a hard time with it. So up until 15 minutes ago, and I had met with, both superintendents asking about the applications and their thoughts on it, and everybody said, this is fine. He can get the work done. It'll work within our timeline. Everything looks good. And, there was no concerns. I have the same concerns that while we have some letters, we have to make a determination on whether or not we're giving somebody the authorization to tap into a line that we have, even between two superintendents, conflicting information about that one didn't know the line even existed, who owns it, is it town? We have an administrator, that doesn't work here anymore, that had said back in, I think, 2005 that it was town property, but it's not registered anywhere. We don't see it anywhere on any plans. So it's, you have to understand where, from our standpoint, it becomes very difficult to say that we can grant authorization to tap into that when we have no legal proof that we have authorization to give you that approval. That's, the other part, when you're down lower and it's below where we say it was documented, legal ownership of it, we know it's there, we can do that. Barring that, I'm going to have a hard time saying yes. Looking at this one and everybody in agreement saying, up until this point, that is absolutely town-owned sewer line. We have no concerns, no qualms with that. Timeframe works, application's good, work can be done, we'll get all the right sign-offs, no concerns. This one is very incomplete and you're asking us to approve it on the fly and then do the work tomorrow. And I don't know I can support that. While it might make sense, to have the 3 distinct tie-ins for the 3 distinct properties, financially it makes sense to not have to run all of that extra piping. You're basically mimicking a pipe that is running on the other side of the road. I get all of that. But I also have to think about the liability of the town and what we're authorizing to be done without proof that we even own that pipe. There's a dispute on whether or not we own that. And so without remedying that dispute, I wouldn't be able to approve an application saying that you can tap into it in those locations. Lower, down below 194, sure, we know we own that. I don't have a problem with that. So that's just my 2 thoughts on it, or lots of thoughts.
One thing that my engineer had suggested, since I don't have a lot of time, the road's gonna be paved, put the pipe under the road, don't make the tie-in. If it's found out later that I can't tie into it, there's a pipe under the road that can't be tied into the sewer. If that was something that I could do, it was looked into that it is town sewer, it isn't town sewer, at that point, I can make the tie-in because it is off of the road. The biggest thing is getting it across the road before they pave it, because then I can't do it for 5 years after it's paved.
I'm not sure I follow what you would do. So what would that proposal be, that you'd put the
Put the
three-
pipe under the road, but don't tie it into the sewer.
So it's stubbed at both
So
ends.
just
Stub on both
stubbing,
ends.
stubbing three of them at both ends, basically?
Yep, and then once it's figured out if that's town sewer or not, at that point, I can make the connection, not have to disturb the road. If it's found out it's privately owned, I can't make the connection, there's a pipe in the ground that goes nowhere and I paid to have that done for no reason. Versus running 750 feet of sewer pipe up the east side of North Street to supply the three houses.
If, and I don't know what the results would be if we could even do that, but if we could, let's say hypothetically, and you lay the three in and then for whatever the reason, they can't be tied in, then you have nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I was,
I'm
Which
I'm
I'm
confident
just
that
concerned.
I'm confident it's town sewer, so
Okay.
I'm willing to take that risk. And if it's not, if it's proved that it's not town sewer, then I have to wait 5 years to be able to tie into the structure that was originally submitted.
And I know we talked about directional drilling or boring instead, because it's obviously an option when the road's like right. I'm not an expert, but that can be done even though the road can't be trenched. We could still drill under it.
Only to that line that is in question whether it's town sewer or not. We wouldn't be able to do it to that structure at 194.
I think you can. They can go quite a distance.
Can they go that
With
far?
it, and again, it's a cost, but yeah, they can go quite a distance. We watched them do it with the new state highway garage.
Right.
Clear across up Route 2 and into a structure.
Because it's about 140 feet to the property line from that structure.
Yeah, that's
They could do that, the one at
that's
State
probably
Garage
pretty
was
close to state
hundreds of
garage to
feet.
that.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say, I think I've seen them do 500 to 1,000.
yeah, and it's only it's a 2-inch line, right? Because it would be a pump.
One, if I stub across, 2 of the lots probably wouldn't have to be pumped, but if it is, actually, if it goes into that structure, they probably, none of them would have
None
to
would be pumped. It's all gravity.
because of the
yeah, so
elevation
in-
difference.
In the coring size, I've only seen it done with a small pump system, so I don't know how big they go up to with doing that also.
So
Say, yeah, at least
Yeah.
4.
Okay. Just trying to understand. And then the ones going across, some of them would be gravity probably, and some might be forced.
Correct.
Okay. Do we even know which ones would need to be which? I mean, to
Yeah.
lay them across? Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
to lay them across, it doesn't make any difference. We'd be putting a structure at each tie across the road, and then it would either be gravity fed to that structure or pumped to that structure. The most north lot definitely needs to be pumped because there's not enough elevation to do that. The other 2 lots most likely can be gravity fed.
The structure would be where, on the east side?
East side, each lot would have a structure and it
On
would
the
either be
east side,
gravity
okay.
fed into or pumped into.
Got it.
Which I have an engineer that is designing all 3 lots with site plans and water runoff type stuff and
And the line across for each of those would be gravity or forced?
gravity. Across the road would all be gravity.
Okay. Linda, did you want to add something? Or if you want to come up, if you do, you can
Just,
rejoin your table over there.
Oh, here, you can be you.
I'm sorry, I don't have much to add in terms of.
I thought I saw your hand. If you don't,
Well, I happened to be a select board member at the time. And I do remember them running the line up. I can't tell you how big the line is. That doesn't mean anything to me. And the only other thing I can add is unfortunately, we had a town administrator who did not always do what we asked them to do or kind of bring things to fruition. So I suspect things may have been dropped in terms of adding it in as a town sewer. And that's about the length of my memory from 19 years ago.
Angie Tessier said that
Thank you. That,
Bruce paid to
and I think that's why
town
we're
sewers on a-
up here struggling, right? And not you. Thank you
No,
for that info. It's just, it's not registered at the deeds differently, but it's also not registered on our plans, and so, and it's not a readily available document that, you know, Pete was able to pull out of the records and go, oh, here's what this means, so.
Unfortunately, I'm not
We're
surprised.
scrambling, yeah.
And I
Right.
think we can tell
Understood.
from some of the things that the town board has done over the past few years in accepting roads and correcting things from the past, that, again, that's another one,
Right.
unfortunately, to add to Mr. Smith's
We
list.
try to learn how to improve things as we go, and hopefully the next board doesn't have to deal with something that we find, right? So we will need to do that about this regardless of the permit. Just figure this out for the future, right? And make sure that we memorialize the situation as clearly as possible, so, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have more to add.
No, I appreciate
that's-
just even that,
Every little piece helps.
yeah.
Well, I'll leave now.
I don't know that I'd remember it from 19 years ago, so I'm impressed.
Believe me, it's barely.
I'm struggling to figure out what we can do, you know, and I know we talked the other day and we didn't have the luxury of time. And I know that the permit that came in Thursday that we were able to put together, and the proposal sounded like it could possibly be viable. The paving got delayed a few days, so, you know, very willing obviously to put it on and talk about it tonight. I don't know about the change submission being anything that we can act on. I tend to agree with Scott that without having this stuff more clearly, or what's the word I'm looking for? Without doing due diligence and research on the documents and trying to get all the records we can and either put together a clearer timeline of everything that was happened and actions and motions made by boards that support those decisions, and then either recording and documenting appropriate plans and location of things, because doesn't sound like we have that, or to the best of our ability what did happen, and then go from there, right? We can only do as much as we can find, but that needs time to do, and I don't know how I'm not comfortable that we have enough information to be able to give authorizations to do that tonight. Yes, please, go ahead.
So you said it's 140 feet up to your property line from the 194? So just gonna throw a scenario out because if you were to put, you said they could do 2 in a day, I'm sure that's not meaning 140 foot plus another one. But if you did one somewhere centrally up on the upper lots that could feed the 2 lots, and for whatever reason, it turns out that that is not town sewer on that side, if he had time to put the one in, stub the one off the lower lot and everything be gravity fed, that way at least you would have 2 in there. And say that the upper one does not work out and then just be filled with flowable fill afterwards, if you find out that you can't tie into it. Does that sound like an option if he puts one across somewhere in the upper lots that could possibly feed 2 of them? It would obviously have to be bigger than a 4-inch pipe, and get the one down into the structure at the lower lot. Again, I don't know if that's a feasible.
I mean, I would rather, if I'm gonna put one across the road and not tie in, to do all 3, like I had said, and if I can't tie them in, then it would be boring to that lower structure later, rather than putting 140 feet under the road that doesn't need to be used. If I can do the three across and just cap both ends until it's decided that the sewer is town sewer, and then make that connection later. If it's decided that it isn't town sewer, then I could bore to that structure at 194.
I don't know enough about wastewater. I don't know. But if you stub it both sides, one side's gonna have a structure. The east side would end up with a structure, assuming you could connect.
Yep.
The west side, if you stub it, and then, is that a bunch of connections just tying to the main right at the last foot or something? I guess I'm trying to picture how that would work. If that's something that's abnormal, I don't think that.
They would put the pipe right to the main and then just cut out the main and put the fitting on after.
Okay, we don't know enough. So the fitting would encompass.
It would
like,
be a TY fitting, so it would encompass the flow coming out of the new one into the main.
Right.
which means about this much to me.
I'm sorry.
That's
Welcome
okay.
to my world and your IT stuff.
Let me just say simply what I'm asking. You're going to bring up that pipe and cap it just almost touching the main,
Correct.
and the
then
fitting will take up whatever void space when
Yep.
if you
Yeah,
did
exactly.
connect, and otherwise it doesn't impact it at all.
Yep.
Correct.
So you're not adding like 3 more fittings and extending and
Nope.
yeah, okay, gotcha.
Still just one fitting.
Yeah, you're not like with
It's a-
couplings and fittings.
It's a
and-
45Y,
yeah,
so that it comes in and still flows.
Okay. Come on up if you would like to resume your original seat. Well, or a seat. A seat's okay.
I just have a question. North Street is a town road, is that correct?
Yes.
So why does the 5-year moratorium apply to it? Has that been adopted by the town of Irving as a bylaw or a regulation?
So we are, we have the, I don't know what the right word is, it's not guidance. We have the understanding that it may apply because it's Chapter 90 funds, which are state funds. And so state roads are under that moratorium. We are looking into clarity on that with council on whether or not that 100% applies to, because of the funding, or if it's select board discretion, or et cetera. At the same time, I mean, just in abstract, I wouldn't, let's say this didn't apply, I mean, we don't, no offense to you, of course, but it's not good to cut into pavement ever around in New England, and it's gonna heave and joints and everything else, so, I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't obviously wanna help someone out and do what they need to do, but I don't necessarily wanna cut the pavement in a year either, regardless of if the 5 years,
That's
100% applies, right?
The only reason why this even came up is because I reached out to Glenn and said, have plans to build this house in the spring.
Right.
If the road gets paved and then I cut it up in the spring, that's something I was trying to avoid, and that's when I found out everything that's happening now.
Right, your question came from the same thing of not wanting to cut a brand new road if we don't have to.
Right.
Not because you heard about the moratorium. The moratorium came after that
Right,
conversation
right.
started, right? And I don't know that we have more definitive information on the moratorium piece yet. Or what, you know, I'm sure on an emergency or what constitutes, you know, discretion and who has it and what we can do. So that's the other piece of that.
Okay.
Does that answer your
Yep,
question?
thank you.
Yeah, the moratorium piece I was aware of on the state roads as well, and we heard that about because of the Chapter 90 funding, so we have the same questions, kind of trying to understand 100% what we can and can't do. But we share the same opinion of not wanting to cut into it unnecessarily either, right? None of us do. I don't know about, we don't do a lot of connections, so have we ever stubbed something like that on both ends and then connected it later in your experience, Pete?
Stubbed one right out here.
One
mean,
end,
it's
one
doable.
side of it.
Right.
Is there any implications? Because I know we've stubbed before on one side because
You
of
you
the
could,
plan.
I don't see why you couldn't stub both ends and then just tie it in later.
From your standpoint, the roadway.
This would be a first. Usually if there's a road opening, it is to tie a service.
Right. At least at one end and the other
Correct.
end soon after, right? Any road condition concerns for you, whether they're stubbed and capped or actually connected?
No, because if, for whatever reason, if they can't be used, then we would just ask that they be filled with a flowable fill and it becomes a solid surface and not a void under the road.
But from a, okay.
But no, I don't have any concerns.
Circling back to a question you asked earlier, you're pretty confident of getting 2 in the roadway, but not necessarily all 3 in the timeline we have.
If I have both days, they could do 3. I was under the impression that it was being paved on Wednesday, so I had only set up for Tuesday, but having 2 days, they should be able to get 3 in.
I don't know.
Thursday, Friday is the confirmed paving days. The sweeper is scheduled to come Wednesday, and then again Thursday morning prior to, because there's a lot of milling dust that has gone to the edge of the roads after driving by. So when I talked to them today about the schedule, just to make sure everything's still on schedule for Thursday, Friday, I asked about the sweeping. They are sending a sweeper out Wednesday and Thursday to be there for the job for the day also.
We
So-
also were only planning on an 8-hour day tomorrow, where if it can be longer than that, I mean, it's not dark until 6:30. So if a detail could go longer than that, I'm not sure how that works. If a detail cop can stay longer than the 8 hours.
I think it all depends on who it is, if they're on shift. I know Chief is still here. So I guess it all depends if they go on shift afterwards at 4, I believe.
Or if they're willing.
And if they're willing.
Yeah, of course.
Just to that piece, Justin, I would say it'd probably be easier to do it that day, go later,
Mm-hmm.
because we could probably get, the officer that's working it needs to be to work for 4. But we could probably have somebody coming off of the day shift to be up there.
Yep.
To fill one now Tuesday morning for Wednesday could be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that, neither here nor there, just because it came up.
So, make sure I heard that correctly. Obviously, you have to figure that out and see if it's viable, but it might be more viable to extend Tuesday than to get another detail on Wednesday.
Correct.
It's a gamble on Justin's part. He has already said he's willing to take the risk. If the risk pays off.
Well, obviously, it must,
No,
must be worth it if it pay off,
if
right?
the risk-
I get
well,
that.
It's
but-
worth it for all of us.
Oh, yeah, it's worth
because
not
it's-
cutting the road,
it's
whether we can or
Done
not.
right, each residence has its own connection.
The only other question I would have is part of the application is dig safe,
The contractor's already done it.
correct, but not for that location.
He did a wide
He-
range though.
He did the whole road, because we've changed so many times since then,
So-
because it was
so
thrown
the-
at me that I couldn't do. I was originally just gonna do the one tie-in, and then found out that the 5-year moratorium, so we marked the whole area, and then found out that it was private sewers, so we marked below the last structure.
So your
that-
dig safe umbrella encompasses all 3 properties in
194
question?
up.
Yep, from
Okay,
the,
all right.
from the structure all the
No,
way
that's,
to.
I just wanted to make sure, because, that would be like one of those unforeseen delays
That,
if it
that's
hadn't
why
been
there's
done.
so much paint in the road, because we changed it so many times
Okay.
within 2 hours.
Okay. I asked it about going down in the 194, but I didn't ask about higher up, so,
Yep.
yeah, good question. It's a big swath. So, right now is, the request, just to make sure I'm clear, is to put in 3 lines, stub them on both sides, 1 for each lot. With the anticipation that hopefully we get all the other stuff sorted out and it all makes sense and we can authorize connections to the main on the west side of the street. And Glenn, you have no that's accurate, right?
Yep.
Okay. You have no concerns with those pipes and just in general with the trenching permit side of it, with having 3 of them stubbed in? Pete, from your standpoint, from the wastewater side of this, you said 4-inch? I don't know what they even are. I
across
mean,
the
we need
road
to be
for-
clear about exactly what they are, right, if we're gonna approve something.
If it's gonna be 3 separate tie-ins, 4 inches sufficient.
4 inch per resident? Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be large enough, absolutely.
And we understand there might be a detail challenge, right? So we're gonna have to, those things have to be obviously checked off before those areas are opened up, right? If you get 1 or 2 done in the first day, and unless you're sure you have a detail, we can't obviously start. What else? Am I missing anything on concerns, issues, regs, if we were to potentially approve that?
The only thing I'm thinking is if we're gonna make sure it's clean on our end, I would ask that the 2 additional road opening permit, so all 3 would be filed instead of just the 1 that you have now.
Right.
And 3 corrected ones would be filed to make sure that the correct locations are tied in with that. There wouldn't be any application for a tie-in because it's not part of this project. Just ensuring that the right pipe is there for, the eventual tie-in in the spring, if we can get that cleaned up for you. So,
So I understand this, so if you're gonna do 3, they're gonna be 4 inches coming across,
Yep.
and those 4 are gonna dump into
8-inch.
an 8 inch, okay.
The sewer main that runs up the west side of North Street right now is an 8-inch pipe.
Right,
And it'd be 4-inch from each house would go into that 8-inch pipe.
okay. I mean, I would probably go with this, the 6 standard. You could do that, just to be sure you have no problems later. I don't know if that's a deal breaker for you. The 4 would work, just, you'd wanna be sure you got the flow coming out. I don't know what your elevation is, so,
It's, the existing sewer line right now is 4 feet deep. And then possibly, definitely one of the lots is gonna have to be pumped, so it's gonna be through a 2-inch line,
right,
pumped, and possibly 2 of the lots would be pumped.
okay.
So it's most likely a 2-inch line is gonna go into the structure before it goes under the road.
Okay.
so you're only talking about flow for just the width of the road.
So after you talked about that, does that make sense, or is it,
Yeah,
should it be
I
something
just like
different?
to err on the side of caution, make sure your pipe's large enough. I mean, it depends how many people are gonna live in the house, if you got multiple things running at one time. I mean, you gotta going out of houses 4 inches now, just depending on what the elevation was. If you're gonna get the pitch, if 2 of them are gonna be pumped, and they're probably gonna be grinder pumps anyways, so it's gonna grind everything up and it should flow nice.
The individual permits would be 1/3 of this permit, right? Of what you had originally submitted in terms of the counts and persons and et cetera, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Pete, to your point of how many? I mean, the permit was for 18, so six persons and
Each house, yeah.
each house, right? For
Right,
each
right.
4-inch.
Just keep in mind that zoning's changed. ADUs are allowed and 2 families are allowed by right.
I was just
in
thinking
every
the same
zone.
thing, by right.
Well, how does that apply when a permit is limited?
I'm just saying, if something changes again in the future.
Sure.
The new property owners decide they want to add an ADU, or they want to add an in-law suite, or something of that nature, the underground utilities still have to be able to support it. Just pointing it out, it's allowed now.
And that's fine, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm asking the original permit for the size of the line that was put in limits what the line is meant for, whether an ADU is allowed or not, correct?
Right, all I'm saying is the next owner may have a very different vision.
I think
Well,
he's,
and then
I
they
think
would
that's
need to-
directed
That would
more
be on
towards
the
the
next one.
applicant saying, is it
That's all I'm
worth your money to spend a few extra dollars and put a 6-inch in because of the new
Well,
Right,
leeways?
If anything changes, I hate to see you take the gamble, spend the money, and then not have an adequate.
It all
size
changed in the
camper.
last year, so.
Right, but I just want
Right,
to differentiate. And recommendation for best practice, I'm all for it. But from a
Right.
town standpoint, if we authorize a permit for 6 people and X number of fixtures, and some future owner wants to put an ADU in and does and exceeds that and the sewer doesn't function, that's the new homeowner's problem to get a permit and get the proper size sewer put in if they need to.
Right. The
At that
problem's gonna
time,
be
in
before it
theory,
ties in-
right? I'm just saying in theory
before
from
it
a town
ties into the
standpoint.
main.
We have no
So-
responsibility for
I'm
flow
just-
above what that,
Advice to you.
That is only,
and I know
choosing
our,
my phrases is.
that's okay, I
careful as
know
I
our
can.
forms are a little out of date, so.
It's not even our forms, I just want to be really clear, there's a lot of players in something like that. If all of those connections happen behind,
Future.
like the
Yes,
main, like through the
yes.
primary structure,
Sure,
the question will never come up.
correct.
So it will never be an issue until it's an issue.
But
where
if they
things
have
are
a flow
backflowing.
issue, that is the
All I'm
property's
saying-
problem.
It won't come through the building inspector, it won't
Sure.
come through anything else. So all I'm saying, if there was, like, you just did one for River Road today. That's only because the initial plan was
Absolutely.
behind the structure.
Absolutely.
That plan changed.
Absolutely.
So the check-in points don't exist yet.
But the problem that may create if it doesn't, if it's not able to handle it, and it never came to a check-in point because it's not a separate connection,
Right.
it's not a town issue.
No.
Because that's all private to the connection to the main.
Right.
It's private under the road, it's private,
Just bring it up.
absolutely, I'm just saying, but
I mean, you'd be fine.
I'm just trying to be clear
Does that ADU
that that's all private issues.
tie it into the first house?
They're not town sewer main issues. It's
It's-
correct.
Lots are
T-
hardly big.
And if you, I don't
They
know,
may
or
not
there's a
be
fine
town
answer, I'm not
sewer.
I
saying.
mean, if you get.
They may be planning board issues, they may be building inspection
Correct.
issues, all of those
Okay.
are town. So you're carving out differences where they.
So,
Okay, all right.
To
Anyway, bring it back to the.
Yes.
To bring it back to the discussion, I guess I would ask the same thing that Pete asked. If we were to approve the stubbing out of 3 pipes, would you be willing to, because of all the nuanced implications that are happening with ADUs and, by right ability to increase capacity and number of residences on any property, and this might be long beyond your time, owning them, selling them, being any part of it, would you be willing to, if we were to approve stub outs of 3, doing those as 6-inch to allow for the maximum number of flow should we incur any, or run into any accessory dwelling units on those properties in the future, knowing that we would have the capacity for expansion and not have to deal with planning board and, any of the other issues that come up, knowing that we have it on record that those are 6-inch and adequate for growth of those properties.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that if that's what's required.
Yeah. And you're right, it's not a town issue as far as the sewer connection at that point or even under the road. It's just a larger picture of other departments dealing with it, and if he's willing to put in a larger pipe because that
I mean,
potentially
we're-
alleviates a lot of those for all players
Absolutely.
for the next decade and a half.
We're trying to make this work, and if that's what we need and you're willing,
Yeah.
then that makes this happen. It sounds like it's worth it for both sides.
Not gonna change the size of the trench dramatically. It's really just
Not
the
at all.
difference
It's
in
the
the
bucket
cost of
size, that's all it
materials.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not
It's a
gonna.
bucket width.
It's gonna be bigger than the bucket width if you can't close the road.
Well, yeah.
Hence, it won't change anything because the trench will already be big.
The trench is gonna be big enough.
All right, you looking for some
Yeah,
closure
we'll
on this
have to
one?
be, unless there's other questions, unless there's concerns we haven't addressed for the department heads, for, our regs or anything else, then like we just need to be very clear about what we're approving since it's not lining up with the app, obviously. And there's clarity that paperwork's got to get cleaned up tomorrow, by end of day for what we decide to do. So I'm assuming you're deciding to put a motion together to.
Yeah, just give me a minute to put some language together. so we can capture everything that we need to capture. And feel free to holler out some stuff if you want to make sure I get it in there.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Brian, how specific do you need addresses for the
don't.
3 lots?
Did we get those issued? You got those issued, the addresses?
Do you have addresses? What are the
What are
3
they?
lots?
It's 195, 197, and 199.
Thank you. Brian, does it make sense to do them individually, or do you care?
I think they can all be one.
Okay.
This is not, I know that some of that area is wet. It's not within 100 feet though, the roadway. On your, well,
Keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, Glenn, on the trenching about the public utility notification piece, but you've already said that this would be acceptable, so whatever that is done or not needed.
Yes. Yep, yeah, they've already done that.
And that doesn't change if it's 3 or 1, because that whole area
No,
is
because it
kinda-
did the whole area.
Yeah, okay.
When do you think you can complete the, I know he said end of day. I'm going to ask earlier than that. When do you think you could have the paperwork completed and given back to Glenn in order to finalize the 3 applications?
I would imagine by lunchtime tomorrow. I just gotta get, do I need the excavation person to sign again?
Yeah, but he'll be there, right?
He won't.
Who's ever gonna be running it?
Is whoever's there is fine.
That's fine.
Okay.
Whoever's licensed, you
Yep.
got the license to run
Who's
the,
operating there?
yeah.
Okay.
Good.
So it'll be canceling or modifying the first one to a single and adding 2 more, or 3 new permits.
Yeah, 3
for
new.
Probably just
trench,
be easier for 3 new ones.
for sewer, and we'll cancel this one.
Not doing sewer permit, right?
Right.
Correct.
Just 3
Oh, we're
trench
just doing it,
permits.
okay, because
Yeah.
we're just doing them under
Yeah,
the
my
trenching
motion's
thing.
going to talk about
Okay, all
the
right,
stubbed
no,
out
that's-
6-inch
that's
pipe.
fine.
And
So
it's going to be a
we'll
long motion, but
we'll come back
it'll
to
get to
the-
what you're looking for.
We'll come
Okay.
back to the permits when we get
Yeah,
the road, the
correct.
connection piece set, okay, got it.
All right, I think I have everything I need.
And these, I know there's the repair guidelines, but these have to be flowable because of the paving date?
Yeah, they offered to do flowable fill because of the paving date,
Okay. We should just
but he's
call that
putting
out.
asphalt on top of the flowable fill, correct, yeah. There is guidelines in the permit for material being used, but they offered to do the flowable fill because of the compaction.
Hence my note, because the
Because it's
guidelines
outside
don't
of the
call
guide-
for that.
it's outside of the
So-
guidelines.
So due to the short timeline, we'll be using flowable fill instead of the standard guidelines.
Correct.
No, I just got to figure out where I'm putting that in. All right. And I'll take any friendly amendments as I go. Make a motion to approve the applications for road opening permits for Frank Fellows. What's your current address? 190,
220 North Street.
220 of 220 North Street. For 195, 197, and 199 North Street, Mr. Fellows is approved to install one 6-inch diameter sewer pipe under each of the respective application locations. Each pipe will be stubbed at both ends until further notice and backfilled with flowable fill. Mr. Fellows shall submit the 3 corrected applications to the Highway Superintendent, Glenn McCrory, by noon on 10/28/24, 10/29.
Yes.
24, and to authorize Superintendent McCrory to sign off on any and all necessary documents.
So a couple things before we second that. You have sweeping on Wednesday.
Sweeping's on Wednesday.
When does it need to be done by to not impede Thursday paving? When do they need to be off the road, completed?
They didn't give me a time frame of when the sweeping was gonna start. He probably has like an hour and a half worth of sweeping on Wednesday. So obviously the sooner the better off the road on Wednesday, but they did not give me a scheduled time.
So is it gonna impact the paving if they're not done when the sweeping's done?
No, because the sweeper's coming back Thursday morning
The
also.
sweeper will be there
Okay.
the
So
entire
That's what I'm
time.
just trying to
the
make sure I'm
sweeper's
clear,
there to get
that's
the
all.
bulk of the milling dust that has now gone to the gutters.
Okay,
So that's what the sweeper's coming for on Wednesday, to get the bulk of it, so it does not slow down the paving process on Thursday morning.
Right.
and this spot area, if it needs attention Thursday morning, won't be an issue.
No.
I've seen the sweepers go in, if they're doing paving at 7,
That's
they're
fine.
there
I
at
just wanna
4 in
make
the
sure
morning
we-
sometimes to make sure
Yeah.
the
Just wanna make
sweepers
sure
are getting
everything's gonna
clean.
work,
Yeah.
that's all.
Any concerns with the language? I'll make sure you
Yes,
get all
please.
the language. That's why I wrote it down, so I can, you won't be able to read it, I'll have to
It's okay. We'll figure it out.
decipher it to you.
Take it off the recording.
Do we
Do
need
that
to be specific about times? Are we allowing it greater time than standard?
I would
Are you gonna handle
allow a later time than the 7 to 3. The good part is it's not really affecting any houses noise-wise. There's some others on one side of it, and the other house is all the way up at the top, so.
I mean, normally this is your authorization, but because of the complexities and it was supposed to be sewer
Yep.
permits and all this, is why we're formalizing it, but if that's within your discretion and you're comfortable that you've got that sorted out, we don't need to add it. Just want to make sure we're clear.
It's gonna be
So
up to
that
the detail officer if there's
Justin
one able
knows
to
what he's
come
got
back.
and what your expectations are,
Yep,
then I'm not concerned.
okay, thank you.
From what needs to be in there, you good?
I'm good.
You're good for where it will be after, you guys? Okay,
Yeah, I just want to make sure I captured everything that you need.
best we can.
This time I'll second that motion.
All right,
All those in favor?
Aye. Good luck, sir.
I know that's gonna be an early morning coming, so
Yeah.
thank you for staying late and getting, I know meeting ran a little long, but hopefully this is successful and we'll
What's that?
start.
Copies of these?
Yep.
I was going to
We'll
say,
work
between now
on-
and the spring, we got to work on that.
Do we have
piece.
copies?
No.
We're gonna get
getting them.
copies? Okay, we're just gonna take copies of those so we
I
can.
didn't know this until just now.
We're just gonna grab a set of copies of those documents, if you don't mind, Glenn, I'll copy them. And then we'll be working on trying to get clarity and plans and documents on what happened back then so that we can get that in order before, you're ready to actually tie.
Yep.
spring, is that kind of your timeline, or sometime next year?
I'm supposed to build in the spring for somebody.
Okay. Well, so tie-in sometime summer-ish,
Yeah.
okay, all right. So
Gives us-
hopefully we can sort all this out.
I was gonna say, gives
Obviously,
us a
we'll
little bit of
reach out-
time to
Yeah,
sort it
the
out.
complicated part, hopefully.
Yeah.
And we'll reach out if
Absolutely.
there's questions, if, anything we can get and help us with
Okay.
otherwise. But hopefully this works out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, good luck.
Appreciate it.
Good luck. Thank you. Okay, that was interesting, informative, I guess I'll say.
Yeah.
I believe you guys all got it. I did send around that
Yes.
document as well, the layout, the lot layout and road
Yes,
layout
thank you.
right there. So you have that as well. Okay. We're back to the agenda, did I?
I don't think,
Did I cover
I think that
everything?
was the last of it.
I think it was.
I believe.
I learned a couple of things tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
for
tabled
sure.
a couple of things, but I think that was the last that we had.
Did we firm up next meeting? We did not.
No.
And were we leaving that open based on our last conversation, that we would firm it up as we go?
That's what I recall.
Would
So
you prefer
tentatively,
something different?
I've been
Yes.
tentatively planning for the 18th.
I meant
but I
him,
don't
but
know
you
when.
too, yeah. You've been tentatively planning for the 18th?
Right.
Okay. I think that's where we are.
I'm fine with that,
If
and
something
then,
changes, we'll reach out
and then we just, yeah,
and schedule, if it needs to be sooner.
yep, that works.
As long as it cannot be the Wednesday before.
Correct, it can't be
Not
the
the-
13th,
not the
right?
13th.
Cannot be the 13th.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll keep that in mind.
And then beyond that, we are meeting on the 2nd. We've already scheduled that.
Correct.
So, I mean, unless there's anything else right now,
Excuse
we'll
me.
plan on 2nd.
And then following, it's already all worked
Yeah,
into the budget
16th,
calendar,
and
so
then-
let's just,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the rest of December probably isn't, but the 16th, and then if we do the 30th or through the holidays around the 1st, we'll have to figure that week, those 2 weeks out. But
Yeah.
other than that, it's pretty much booked from there.
okay,
Yep.
yeah, that works.
Be back to weekly. Whee! Can't wait.
Well, that was short-lived.
Actually, we've gone longer than I
Yeah, we
ever
have.
thought we would.
We did.
It's a far cry from 4 or 5 hour remote ones every Monday, so it's progress. Okay, and we'll have to fit one in there for Zobrio training, so
Yes.
walk through. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, then make a motion to adjourn at 9:43 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.